And we always say, by the way, we say that we invest in the founders, right?
Yes.
Not actually in the business itself. Sometimes the business model is going to change.
Of course.
And most probably is going to
It will change.
So it's really about whether you have that resilience, whether you have that grit to kind of like, grow with your business.
Where do you see this region when it comes to venture capital, startups, entrepreneurship heading? What is missing and slowing us down to actually reach to those goals?
Oh, yes. Okay, I see. Yes. AI is not a hype. I just want to make this clear, okay?
Can you define AI? So yeah, listen, I'll tell you what. It's a Sunday morning, so I don't know when this will be published, but it's a Sunday morning. On the National Day holiday of the UAE, you had a couple of meetings in the morning. I had a couple of meetings in the morning. I sent a few emails. You sent a few emails, still early in the morning. Are you an entrepreneur?
I mean, that is the essence of being an entrepreneur.
What is
right?
entrepreneurship to you?
Literally. That's a very good question. What's entrepreneurship to me? I mean, beyond that, beyond the hectic schedule, as you said, an international holiday and a Sunday, and we're literally running from a meeting to another, I think really what I like about entrepreneurship and kind of like for me, the essence of its definition is the creativity and the ability to create something actually innovative and that's not there. Or maybe in a new way or in a new direction, in a new market, in basically something innovative about it, right? This is kind of like really what I like about entrepreneurship. And for you to do that, it's hard. So you need to have those meetings on a Sunday morning.
You know, I always, when I talk about entrepreneurship, and I'm literally just venturing, I'm not like you, for over a decade being an entrepreneur and working with entrepreneurs. I was in the corporate sector, obviously as an employee, a corporate leader for forever. Mm-hmm. And just recently kind of stepped into the entrepreneurship. And I'm like, I can't remember the last time I read a book.
Oh my God.
I curled down and just read a book or just took, I mean, listen, it's not a complaint, right? And it's not a badge of honor. Let's just be real, right? We enjoy it, we like it. But at the same time, it's not a torture. And you were just a moment ago talking about work-life balance. And it struck me to think about, I never heard this term since I was an employee, like work-life balance.
I think so. In 2025, and actually at the age where we are, the work-life balance kind of like concept, I see it more of like work-life integration now, really. I mean, this is not, again, as you mentioned, right? This is not kind of like a badge of honor to tell you like, be a slave for your work or something, but it's more of like, see how your life integrates to your work and how your work integrates to your life, really. I mean, if someone basically is an early riser and kind of like they can do more in the early morning and then they can kind of like have the evenings to themselves, please do. If actually it's the opposite, please do as well, whatever works for you. So it's really, and again, in the age of AI, the age of tech, the age of like, you've really got kind of like, quick access to everything you want, whether it's leisure or work, then really it's your options and your mandate to actually kind of like, have your life the way you want it to be.
And you know exactly what you need to achieve and you work towards that, whether it's, meaning that you have to work at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., exactly. 7 a.m., or the PM counterparts all the way to 11, 12 p.m. But the point is how people look at you and how people evaluate you and judge you when you're doing these things. And that's where I think entrepreneurship shines. In my opinion, entrepreneurship shines where people don't care about how people think. I remember back in the days when I used to kind of leave work slightly on time, but look around and everybody's still working. And I'm like, am I leaving early? It's still time,
You're like
right?
that judgment and that kind of like perception of like, how am I looked at?
Exactly. But when you're an entrepreneur, you really don't care. You just, wear denim all the time, t-shirts, you just go places. And at the same time, you're actually producing, you're actually focused on what you need to do. And that's what excites you. So
that's actually true. That's even actually again, in the direction of entrepreneurship, right? You see a lot of entrepreneurs actually kind of like are a bit stubborn in terms of an opinionated because of that, because of like, and sometimes it's needed. It's not always a good thing, but it's actually sometimes it's really needed because if you believe in a direction and something actually you want to do, a lot of people are going to tell you it's not possible because they have not seen it before. And it's something kind of like maybe they're not seeing the vision that you're seeing, right? So you need to actually have that way of like, I don't care.
I don't care.
I'll do it. Thank you for your opinion.
Thank you, but
I
no
respect
thanks.
it. But then this is why there are 8 billion people in the planet. You know, we don't have to have all the same opinions. And you told me last time, right? You told me one of the things actually we like between you and me, Chada, is like we didn't have the same opinions, so we had a rich discussion, right?
Exactly.
And it's totally normal. That's what it should be, right?
That's how it's supposed to be. I mean, the thing is, when one of the things that I see when I go and I work with many of my clients who are organizations, large and small, and they have all sorts of hierarchies, they have all sorts of cultures and sort of goals and geographies and et cetera, you see a successful company when you see the differences and the colorfulness of the workforce and the way they're able to actually voice those opinions without being looked down at or without fearing of losing face or being judged or anywhere in between, right? Those companies definitely are successful. And I've seen it anecdotally, but at the same time, it's only logical that this is the case, because otherwise, if everybody is fearing for their opinions, obviously you don't know which opinions are being suppressed. Of course. And therefore, the opportunity lost is infinitely magnified. And therefore, you won't be able to know whether you're making it or not. Even if you're making a double-digit growth, what about triple-digit growth? I mean, you talk about startups which actually have literally 3-digit growth, let's say 300, 400% year-on-year growth. I was just analyzing the other day Ninja from Saudi and how they, from 2022 until now, they became a 1.5 billion valuation, right? With their recent raise. That had an IRR of like 500%? It's crazy. I mean, talk about hyper growth, not just hyper growth, exponential growth, but that can't happen if you're just conforming to the same, like you said, way of thinking amongst everybody within the organization, don't you think?
Absolutely. I was leading, when I was in corporate as well, I was leading actually the corporate women network and across the region. So it was actually Middle East, Africa, Turkey, and India as well. And the mandate was there actually that, hey, we want to have more diversity. It was more just kind of like, women. It was more, we need to make sure that we have diversified backgrounds in the company. We need to actually be active about it, proactive, and go out there, hire them and retain them and make sure actually also they are being promoted, right? To basically the places where they can have voices, where they can share their opinions. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have different perspectives, you're failing already. If you have one color in the company, you're literally basically kind of like drawing yourself to, I would say, trap yourself into kind of like
or one and the rest is just yes men and women around them, which is the most dangerous thing. And I always ask leaders, especially CEOs who I coach or work with, and I ask them, how do you know? How do you know that you're not surrounded by people who are all yes and they're actually voicing their opinions? Because I mean, you have to give it to CEOs. It's really lonely at the top. And everybody, when they talk to them, they want something from them. And they usually put on all sorts of masks that it becomes really difficult for that CEO or that leader or that founder or that kind of person at the top to discern between actually genuine, clear, sort of honest and sincere feedback and opinion and just fluff. It's very difficult.
You get used to filtrate. You basically, this is your job. As a CEO, that's actually what you do, right? You talk to a lot of people and you need to be, this is why also I like the T kind of like, theory. You need to have actually kind of like at least, I would say a minimum knowledge about all functions of your company, about kind of like all knowledge or all domains where you're playing at. And then you have your expertise. Why? Because when you talk to people, you want to be able to kind of like have a discussion. And when I say discussion, a discussion where you can kind of like at least challenge them, even if not kind of like bringing something completely in a different way, at least challenge that and kind of like, you're able to get the best out of it. But at the same time, you're not kind of like just sitting there and receiving, but you're actually creating that two-way discussions, right? I just like think last week or something, I was preparing an AI program for basically an energy company that they wanted us to kind of like come in and prepare more of a training program for them, right? And one of the people I'm working with in our team was very specialized into this. And he's the PhD in the US around AI and oil and gas and energy and so on. So it was very specialized. So he came in with some comments in there and they were brilliant comments, right? Some stuff, obviously, I kind of like, me and my team kind of like missed and stuff. And then in some of them, I was like, hey, in this one, I don't agree. Why? Because I know there is actually like this method in here and I know that there is in there. What do you think around that? I think that would be more efficient than actually what yours mean. He was like, oh, shut up. I see your point. Yeah. Maybe actually, like if we manage this with this, that would be actually like more efficient in getting the outcome that we want to see. What I'm trying to say here, I'm not the expert in that domain, right? But I have the enough knowledge. I have kind of like, enough, I would say, kind of like perspective about it. And I've kind of like done this myself so that someone comes to me, I know how to counter argue, or I know how to kind of like push to the direction that I want. I want efficiency out of this equation. I don't want anything else. Maybe he was looking into kind of like, time, which one is kind of like shorter in terms of application and so on. I am looking for efficiency. So the optimization equation is different for my goals. So I need you the experts, to kind of like redirect to my own goals and objectives for the company or for the program, whatever it is. And for you as a CEO to do that, you do need that T equation from that perspective.
Exactly. I mean, if you keep this slightly, yeah.
Sure.
So I'll tell you what, while you're talking, I couldn't help but think about two things, right? Or two, I don't want to call them mental models, but paradigms, kind of way of thinking, frame of reference to the way you're able to have a discussion that has differences of opinions, but at the same time able to reach a place where, like you said, it's effective, efficient, and obviously achieving the goals in the most meaningful way. The two things are critical thinking, I know it's overused and cliche, and first principles thinking. So both, I feel, are either misunderstood, overused, meaningless badges of intellectual performative acts.
Okay.
What do you think about, let's talk about critical thinking first. What do you think about critical thinking? Because I love how you just jumped into kind of, differences of opinions, which is really important, but sometimes people are not able to kind of differentiate between and have that, how do I say it, high EQ, where they're able to kind of differentiate between the idea and themselves. And if you attack the idea, you're attacking their person and character, and therefore critical thinking is down the drain, right? What do you feel about it in our region?
That's a very, very, very important thing. And I think we're yet to get there, honestly, like from that perspective and kind of like in our entrepreneurship ecosystem. Why? The reason is because we are a society by nature in our kind of like region that is high in terms of like emotional bonding, and we have our social rituals, and it's very kind of like, I would say it's a pride in itself, right? We take it actually in pride that, hey, in every Friday we kind of like we're meeting and stuff, and we keep the family close and we keep the friends closer and everything. So that is obviously being taken to the professional scene, exactly. And with its positives and negatives, it comes in there. But we need to kind of like, I believe, as you said, when the professional side really be able to kind of like, differentiate between the person and the opinions. It's completely different things. I could basically be completely different with you and your opinions, but tomorrow we're gonna have coffee together. That's totally fine. I don't have any issue.
That's okay.
Exactly.
That's actually encouraged.
There you go. That's encouraged. And a lot of people actually still don't take it. Sometimes and I've seen it when I'm challenging people, I'm like asking so many questions in kind of like a question.
You feel the temperature is rising, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm like, hey, relax. Relax. I don't hate you.
It's not an attack.
Exactly. It's not an attack. I'm not hating you or anything. I'm just trying to really understand your logic. I'm trying to understand why you did that, or what's the rationale behind it, or kind of like, asking the five W's questions. Yes. Exactly. I'm just trying to basically see a common ground for us to actually work together and kind of like, again, achieve goals. I'm a person who have a vision. So I always see like, what's the shared goal for us, right? For example, you and me, Osama, today, a shared goal is to record a successful episode, right?
An informative kind of education.
There
Exactly.
you go. How can we best work together to get there? That's kind of like really what's the mantra.
As long as we share that and we don't have any kind of personal sort of hidden agendas that kind of contradict. It's okay to have personal agendas if it aligns, but if it contradicts, then this is a problem, right?
There you go. And we have to focus on the shared goals. I think this is where people kind of like, misunderstand, or they take it personal, is because they forget that there is a shared goal between them and the other person. The other person is not going to kind of like just ask you those questions if they're not interested in what you're doing, right? If someone else
it's actually a compliment.
There you go.
They're interested.
Exactly. That's how I see it, and that's how you should see it, and that's how everyone else see it.
But
I'm not asking questions,
do you know that happen? I'm sure you know this.
Yeah.
It happens also between co-founders, don't you think?
True. Very true. Very true. Absolutely true. I mean, it's just sometimes perspectives, you see? Like if you see it from the as I said, if you just see it from the angle of like, oh, this person is really interested, he's asking questions and like, and deep diving and so on, it gives you more energy and more courage to
and
actually
motivation to actually double down on explaining your idea.
There
now,
you go.
Sometimes
you shouldn't back off.
We shouldn't, but because this is sort of, I'm a student of culture and innovation, and obviously innovation is about risk taking, and risk taking meaning being comfortable in the uncomfortable and just kind of having these hard discussions. And obviously the essence of it, the baseline, is critical thinking and sort of emotional intelligence and empathy. I mean, those three words that are again used and abused in a way that kind of loses meaning. So people don't know exactly what to do with them. It's like, sometimes I train my daughter. So while she's training, I'm telling her, tight, or tighten your core. I was like, Daddy, what does that mean? I was like, yeah, you're right. It's like too abstract for me to actually embody them. But the point that I want to make is, if we go back to critical thinking, the base for critical thinking is empathy, meaning when someone is saying something, I am able to check or discern between the signal and the noise. Mm-hmm. What that means is there's a tonality, there's the way the message is delivered. That's different according to culture, according to person. I filter out that and I see exactly what is the message. Now, obviously, there are bad faith actors. Obviously, there are people who are quote unquote bullies and disrespectful and crossing the ethical lines. We're not talking about that. We're talking about two professionals who have all the good faith in the world, trust and honesty. So we're talking about that. But the thing is, if I'm not having the skill set and the talent to actually see through the noise of my own perception, of assigning meaning to the method you're delivering the message with, and then start building my own assumption. Because remember, perception is projection, right? So if I have a perception, I'll project it on you, and therefore I will see it because I'm projecting it on you, and therefore it's what's inside of me. And you're confirming
your bias.
And I'm confirming my bias, exactly, because it's all my experiences, my own scar tissue, my own kind of hurt feelings that I've experienced there. But that requires talent, and that requires deliberate, conscious sort of training to be able to do that.
And this, what you said, requires talent and training. I think this actually goes back to, the saying that tells you, your business is not going to out-level you, is not going to outsmart you as a founder, as a CEO, meaning that you have to work on yourself. And the entrepreneurship journey is actually all in essence about yourself, working first actually on your own, as you mentioned, right? Your own perception, your own biases, your own kind of understanding of the world, your own both IQ and EQ, your own empathy before you actually work on the business. And I believe that this comes from, again, a feeling or basically a principle or a belief that I can work on myself better and I'm not perfect. I'm always actually learning something new. I'm always basically, as an entrepreneur, you're pushing something actually, as we said, pushing yourself to the uncomfortable zones. And that's basically, I am really kind of increasing the margins of my learnings, right? So this is something that I think founders and CEOs really need to take seriously, working on themselves as much as they work on their businesses, because it's just kind of there is a correlation over there that's really, really, really needed.
Wow. I'll tell you what. So this actually, while you're talking, it's just the whole idea of critical thinking again materializes in my mind, because if you're not competent in the field that you're in, and 90% of your, let's say, interactions are performative and based on confidence that is, let's say, decorative, not substantive, you will be shaken at every corner and you will crack under pressure. So if they don't apply what you just said now, which is continuous, unequivocal, deliberate, and conscious learning and developing themselves in all fields. Remember, an entrepreneur is someone who has I always think of an entrepreneur like an octopus, that octopus with a he has everything. He needs, finance, marketing, operations, talent acquisition, managing legal, contract, all of that
Totally.
Crazy. And if you're not actually, and this is what sometimes, I don't want to use the word frustrates me, but I said it. So there you go.
It's there.
It's out there. It's when I have a founder who, the moment I open a spreadsheet to them, they say, "Oh, wait, freak out is an understatement." They shut down, literally, like a Windows. I can hear the 10, 10, 10, 10, shut down. I'm like, you're a founder. If you don't know how to understand your numbers, I mean, I know that you're a coder. I know you're a brilliant engineer, brilliant, medical professional, whatever it is that you're in, but you claim to be an entrepreneur. If you don't understand numbers, at least at enough level to get you in and out. And that's one of the skills that allows you to be confident and actually not being shaken if someone asks you, wait, how are you making 700% ARR year on year on your projections?
Exactly.
How on earth are you able to answer that question when you're put under pressure without actually being shaken and become defensive about your own numbers?
No, absolutely. I think back to basically the point of what you said, the confidence, competence, and then your social interactions, right?
Yes.
I link this up to actually the earlier question as well, which is you said on our culture and so
Yes.
on. Our culture is also high in trust, by the way.
Right.
So like we come in kind of basically by default, we trust each other in a way or another. And that usually plays into the confidence aspect. So entrepreneurs or founders think that actually that would be the same in the business, again, in the business arena.
Until they're hit by reality, right?
There you go. Exactly. It doesn't work that way. If you're not competent enough, people will not actually, give you that, I would say that affirmation that you get in the social arena.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
And then hence
I
your
like that,
confidence.
the affirmation. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And then your
it's like an
confidence is
adrenaline
shaken.
rush that you get.
There you go. Exactly. You really have to work on it. If you are a founder, if you are actually a CEO in business, you have to have that competence because competence builds your confidence. And then also, if you don't have it, it's fine in the beginning. This is not to discourage people from being actually entrepreneurs or anything. We're not born kind of like scientists and stuff and all, right?
It's a class you can transition to. It's not like you have to be from this nationality or this skin color or it's a class that you're able to transition to.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
So it's a merit-based class, yes.
Exactly. It's a merit-based. It's just merit-based. It's something like I know where I'm strong at. I know where I'm actually kind of like still have areas of development and I'm going to work on it. The fact that you're working on it gives you confidence.
Yes. Exactly.
Just the mere fact of
and I
actually
guarantee anyone, and that's why they say, the more you know you don't know. And the more you know you don't know, the more you're humbled and the more you're actually able to get critique and get excited by critique because that's, oh wait, I can learn something new here because you're always curious and you're always kind of because you're comfortable being uncomfortable and therefore no one can shake you. What's the most exciting thing you're working on right now, Chada?
What's the most exciting thing I'm working on? Wow, okay. So we kind of like took the audience into 20 minutes talking or something. Now we
because I want to put you under the spot for a second and test your confidence and confidence.
No, absolutely, no worries. So my name is Chada. I'm Chada El Islam Benmahcene. I am now leading a venture studio for AI and energy tech. It's a very exciting intersection, I would say, where really you're talking about basically the hype of AI and what's all
NVIDIA, and we'll talk about that in a second.
That's a little bit harsh. Already getting into the bubble of AI. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Exactly. We'll talk about it. So AI and energy is basically kind of like a very interesting intersection that we're working on right now. We really basically have, as of now, kind of like, what we do is we build and we invest in startups and companies within this intersection. And as a venture studio, by default, we're not an accelerator, we're not a VC, we're actually in between. So what we do is that we write the check, but then also we actually build ourselves those startups and then we spin them off at a certain criteria or a certain level when they have kind of like... You
sell them as secondaries or...
Very good question. We do not sell them. What means basically is that we have a certain percentage that we keep as a venture studio.
All the way till liquidation event or exit.
There you go. Okay. Exactly. And then we recruit a CEO, or we recruit actually a co-founder who would take it further actually.
Right.
You see? So we build the product roadmap. We basically get the first external investor, which is again another validation. It's not just our check. We get another investor.
Because the due diligence that institution will do will just validate everything you do.
There you go. Exactly. And then we provide the tech stack and the administration stack, right? Everything about legal, accounting, like HR and so on and so forth. So the tech stack and the administration stack, we provide it internally. Once basically we have a certain criteria, which is for us basically, you have your client, we're B2B. So there is a product market fit, which kind of like is...
All of your startups are B2B.
Yes, exactly. We're B2B. Right. So we have a certain product market fit criteria, which is really special to our venture studio.
You're big on CAC and LTV and sort of business development and CRM.
Absolutely. And we track all of this. Okay. And then even the people we recruit as co-founders, we want them to kind of like,
Come from
go
the
through
corporate,
because we want them to go through basically those metrics and kind of like, have into that. And you said a very good question in comment. Coming from corporate, it doesn't have to be. We basically kind of like, get people who are operators, yes, who have actually like, the background about it. But then also we prefer actually failed entrepreneurs. You know why?
Really?
Because
at later stage or early stage?
It's an early stage.
At an early stage. Okay.
Is a pre-seed.
No, because you said that you recruit at a later stage CEOs and COOs.
At a later stage of what we are doing, which is basically.
So once you have product to market, MVP, let's say revenue, profitability.
Exactly. That's what I mean. And I'll tell you why. I mean, because they have the entrepreneurship grit. And they have actually tried it before, so they've known actually already what they've done before and so on. And now we're giving them that kind of like, stability and a little bit of kind of like de-risked innovation, right? It's a
sort of speak.
Exactly. I mean, entrepreneurship is always risky anyway.
But relative to obviously a PowerPoint slide where now you have something.
Exactly. That's the thing. You have something, you have actually a customer, you have like, already investments, you already kind of like you're coming into a platform.
Tech.
Yeah, it's purely tech. Okay. It's purely tech. You're coming into a platform which is already de-risked, kind of like the early stages for you. So the
market
kind of
pull is established. You have some sort of a client base that you're able to reference during your discussions.
Exactly. And then you can take it and scale it actually from afterwards. This not to say that the venture studio only hire those people. Also, people from the corporate are some brilliant people for us because, like, they've seen, and we deal with corporates. We actually sell to the corporates,
especially the operations side, right? The SOPs, the workflows, the handovers.
They would be really great actually from that perspective as well, and they would have that view or that kind of like I would say that muscle, the corporate muscle from that perspective,
the muscle memory for how to deal with structured sort of scale-ups. Yes,
exactly. Especially in venture studios, we cannot kind of like of course we need innovation, we need disruption and everything, but then also there is a structure that actually needs to kind of like be followed in that perspective, right? So that would be what would be from that. I always talk about entrepreneurs, right? The people who are actually kind of like within the corporate and they innovate and stuff, they would be the right people for that. So for now, actually, that's what we're working on. We're kind of like finalizing the pre-launch for ENTROGX Ventures, and you guys are all invited for. I saw it.
So listen, okay. So I had a question. Now, don't judge me. Okay, don't judge me.
Go ahead.
I love your kind of brand, ENTROGX, and why is the T has a tie?
Yes.
I thought you're kind of vouching for women, and I live in a house of women. I have 2 daughters and my wife. So what's up with that?
By the way, the ties is not just for men. The tie is also for women. I have.
Don't take it away from us. Come on, you took everything.
I don't wear it. I don't wear it.
Okay, so it's a unisex sort of tie. Okay, fine. Fair enough.
It's red, right? Red is for women. You see?
Trump wears red all the time, right?
No, I mean, I'll tell you the rationale behind it, basically. So the rationale was really that, hey, we wanted something that actually is like, tells you about innovation, but tells you about structure as well.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh, right. Yes, the corporate sort of stuff.
Exactly. It's about that. Because we are a venture studio.
You know what? I'll tell you what. I love a brand that has a background story that actually is linked to a purpose. Well done. I love that. Okay, now it makes sense. You see? I have no reservations on that. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So that's the thing. Again, it's all about where we are as a venture studio, right? Yes, we're all about entrepreneurship and kind of like, thing, but also we're not startup just as a startup. We're an innovation with actually kind of like, structured platform that we basically work on.
So the startups or the entrepreneurs you're working on or the ventures you're working on, are they LLC'd and banked and compliance, or do you keep them inside your, under your sort of wing until a certain stage where you decide, there's a trigger where you decide, okay, now let's LLC them, or let's just keep them in
Amazing. So I'll tell you how the venture studio structure works in the world. And then basically I'll tell you about us as ENTROGX Ventures, how we are, right? So usually there are 2 models actually and by the way, the ENTROGX Ventures, the venture studio model or the startup studio model is not new in the world. It's new in our region.
So let me sort of to structure it for our viewers and for myself as well. We have 3 sort of constructs, which is Accelerator, Incubator, and Venture Studio. Is there something else? Or
the VC?
So the VC. Okay, so it's like, and then you have the investor community, right? So the investor community, which is angel investors, VC, and then obviously VC typically under PE, and then you have,
exactly.
But let's leave the investor community and talk about these 3 sort of enablers for those startups, right? Because you can do it with funding, or you can do it bootstrapped, which is when VC is in or out the equation. But then you have incubator, accelerator, and venture studio, right? Sure. Just run me through the kind of distinction. I know it's always blurred and it's not really distinct, but yeah.
100%. I'll tell you basically my own opinion, how I see them, and how basically the founders can really benefit from it, right? This is kind of like really what we're looking for at the end of the day. So the incubator is basically when you're having an idea. Yeah. You have something, basically, you sketch some kind of like, especially now with AI, you sketch something kind of like, in the app. You don't really know what to do with it. You don't know how to validate it. You don't know how to kind of like really make it an MVP, which is the minimum viable product, or what we call it in our actually own studio, the minimum lovable product. We want stuff that actually the customer is obsessed with and really love them, whether actually it's kind of like, what we see as is viable or not. It's what actually them see it. It's not at the end of the day.
It's the value in the eye of the beholder, right?
There you go. That's exactly it. So we call them the minimum lovable product. But in internet, you see it MVP, right? So you go to the incubator. Why? Because you have an idea, you want to validate it, you want to see what's the next steps that actually can just tell you that this is something that you could have in the market or not. And usually this goes with cohorts. They're not taking person one on a go. So this is kind of like more of like, we have a cohort, like a winter cohort and summer cohort or something like that, and they bring you in, and you are with another basically group of founders or another group of people, kind of like who are
with ideas.
Exactly, with ideas as well. And they go. So this is the incubator. The accelerator is kind of like usually even longer in term. The incubator is like shorter in term, maybe like I don't know,
few months time,
exactly,
3 months, 4 months. Okay.
The accelerator is more. It's like we want to basically whatever you have, we want to accelerate your momentum.
Wow.
We want to get you
what you have. So the assumption is there's something that you have.
There you go. Exactly. So it's like, if you're having already 2 customers, we want to get you to kind of like, 5 customers. That's, I'm talking if you are B2B. If you're B2C, you're like in the few tens, you want to get you to the few hundreds and so on and so forth, right? So you're still very early stage. You're still kind of like, testing the idea, looking for the product market fit. But then you really kind of like, you pass the idea, your idea is validated a little bit in the market, though you're really just trying to see if you're solving the right problem for the customer or not. And usually some of the accelerators nowadays, they even actually invest, right? They invest and they take kind of like, some equity from that perspective.
They themselves have funds or they partner with funds?
It depends.
Or it depends.
It depends.
Both are
some
okay.
of them, some of them might actually like be
but incubators. But incubators don't have
not
funds.
Usually, no,
not usually.
No, usually.
It's unusual if an incubator. Okay.
Exactly. The incubators are more like let's kind of like just tell you how this entrepreneurship world works.
Right.
That's kind of like how it is. It's really mentorship.
What's their business model?
That's a very good question. The business model is basically that the entrepreneurs would pay actually, or kind of like
Can they?
That's the thing. If you want to kind of like, because it's structured, it's structured as trainings. It's structured as like,
okay,
that's what I'm saying, right?
Gotcha, okay.
So that's the model for it usually. But there are some other incubators who do it for free and they have grants from the governments or
probably
kind of like from basically the FDI or whichever, basically. A lot of basically
So it's not equity based?
It's not equity based. No. The accelerators is where they start usually with equity based.
Because too early for equity, because equity is meaningless at the beginning. Gotcha.
There you go. And you don't know what it's an idea, right? It's basically
and
something.
You pivot probably 100 times,
there
so it's meaningless.
There you go. Exactly. And even accelerators, when actually they take equity, it's usually very small. It's like 1 to 2% even actually at the time. Yeah, because again,
what's their business model then? Accelerators, same thing?
Same thing. So basically the accelerators is actually, I told you they give you money, right? Sometimes basically when they give you money, the allocation in itself.
Right. There's an allocation of, if I give you $100,000, $30,000 will go into the accelerator.
Exactly.
Okay,
that's exactly what I mean. Yes. That's exactly what I mean. So yeah.
But that's from a fund. So there's LPs. So that's how they kind of circle the money.
There you go. Exactly. So yeah. So basically like, at the accelerator level is like when things start getting serious, I would say from that perspective, right?
So accelerator still, it's not necessarily that you have an LLC or a bank business bank account.
Absolutely not.
But you could.
True. You could, of course you could. Of course you could. But you're just testing again an app or something and you've got few users. You want to now kind of like see how you stabilize it, or not really stabilize it. You never stabilize in entrepreneurship. But it's more of like how you get to the route where you incorporate and so on and so forth. Actually, that's where the accelerators comes in, right? And then comes the venture studio. So in a venture studio, basically to your question also, you also asked this question, you were like, Chada, how are those ventures kind of like, under your wing? initially they're more like virtual P&Ls, let me say, right?
Gotcha. Under a bigger P&L.
Exactly.
Okay.
Under a bigger P&L, which is the parent
company. Which is the profit and loss sheet in the accounting.
Yes. Sorry, I assume.
Well, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, most of the viewers are actually educated for sure, and CEOs, but just in case.
That's true. You're doing it the right way. Actually, we need to demystify the abbreviations, right? Yeah. Okay. So it's like more like virtual P&Ls, profit and loss, kind of like pillars and sheets. But then once again, they achieve certain criteria and certain KPIs, as I mentioned earlier, which is like, the first external check. We get
certain triggers that is set from the beginning, and depending 100%. On those KPIs, which has clear measures, those key performance indicators, they have key measures, and these measures are assigned to a time frame of some sort. Absolutely. And then with that trigger, then it unlocks the next stage, let's say.
Exactly.
Until you reach the final boss.
There you go.
Which is raised, let's say, or...
Exactly. At that stage, it spins off, and now it's a legal company. You see what I'm saying? It's basically a legal company on its own. Or it might not reach that actually level within the time frame, and then we just kill it. You see? That's also the idea of the venture studio is
when
basically
you kill it, what does that mean?
Very good question.
Is it a liquidation event? Is it
that's a very good question. Amazing. So you remember when I said basically we provide a tech stack, an administrative stack?
Yes.
So that's basically a set of people, expertise, and knowledge, and SOPs. Again, SOPs is the standard operating processes.
As the kind of rules and procedures and policies to kind of hand over from one step to the other.
There you go. Exactly. So these two is basically something that we offer to all the ventures, right?
Yeah.
Once we decide that we're going to work on a certain venture, which is basically a certain idea and a product that actually we get in and so on, we're providing that from those tech stacks. We're providing the first check, as I mentioned, also from ENTROGX Ventures. If basically we did not achieve those KPIs within basically the year, this means that this idea is not viable. This means that this product is not really actually
doesn't have
in
a market,
the world. Exactly, is not going into the route of product market fit. That's a very good question. From one idea to another, it's different, and that's why we have
B2B,
the pool of experts.
So it's mostly okay.
Exactly, that's why we have our pool of experts. But in general, I'll tell you basically the generic ones, right? The generic ones. First of all, you need to kind of like, because we are in contract, because we are in corporate, we need to have basically a certain ACV, right? Which is an annual contract value based on the contracts that actually we have signed. So we need to have at least kind of like 2 or 3 corporate contracts, and we have an average ACV that's actually
that contributes meaningful to your ARR, the annual recurring revenue.
Exactly, yes. And then we have also, again, as I mentioned, the external check. People externally, as in their investor community, are actually believing in the idea. They're believing on the angels, or could be institutional, but both, by the way.
Right.
So, so basically, if they are believing in what we're building, they believe that this actually, like, venture has a future, and the team who's working on it is actually, like, meaningful as well to that idea. Then yes, okay, now another validation trigger is actually in place, right? If we're finding also that we have basically our pool of experts are kind of like pitching in and providing us with basically new ideas for the product roadmap, that is another validation trigger.
So features.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's, by
product
the way,
development. Okay.
Exactly. That's, by the way, very important, because a lot of people kind of like, forget about it.
Of course. That's the most important, because how can you guarantee sort of growth? Because otherwise you're not just, you're saying.
There you go. It's about the growth. It's good that you build something and then you go out and test it, but then also you need to see for the future of that actually like product, right? Are you really building for a future roadmap? Are you building for the future customer? Are you building for the growth actually of that product or not, right?
Because otherwise it's not investable.
There you go. It's not investable. If you only have actually those features and you don't know what you're doing tomorrow for it, then it's dead already.
It's dead.
So that's actually also one of the triggers, right? And then obviously all the financial triggers. Basically, we're talking ARR, MRR, the growth,
NPV,
basically. Exactly, right? The LCV, like the CAC. How does it actually really take us to get the customers, and so on and so forth. So once those triggers are in place, okay, it spins off. It's now kind of like, a company on its own. And by the way, we hire the co-founder before the spin-off. Huh? So we make sure that basically like, there is a leader who is taking the mandate now before it spins off. So that's kind of also very important.
So initially, who starts with it? Is it you?
It's venture builders. Yes. It's us. It's basically the people myself, my leadership team, and the tech stack people, the tech stack and the financial stack people.
So you scout for ideas, you look for the ideas, you start building those ideas, and then as you're building those ideas, once you see some traction, then you look for a co-founder.
There you go.
That you give them equity to register an LLC and then have all sorts of SHA. Is it there's a shareholder agreement?
And then, there is of course because we give them equity, right? We give them in the beginning basically like a small salary. It's not really a salary, but then
it's a founder's salary.
Exactly. And then once basically they come in and spins off, there's a shareholder agreement, there is everything, and then now the mandate is actually on them to kind of like scale
to take it and run with it.
Yes, rather than ourselves. And then here, what's the difference between basically the earlier stages of the founder in Incubator Accelerator is that here they get a validated product, right?
Yes.
They get something actually already with customers, with investors, with an ecosystem, right, around it that actually supports.
Practically speaking, there's a code and it's tested with some people, and those people are willing to pay money for this code, take it and run with it.
There you go, exactly that. And for us, we can even kind of like, because I know this question is coming, you always ask it. You're going to say, what's your model? How do you get money out of it, right? So basically...
Exactly. Okay, so proceed.
There you go. I know you too well now.
That's true.
So basically...
It's all about cash, right? Without cash, what's the point of everything?
100%. There are two things. So there is the long term and the short term. So for us, it's actually, first, we're licensing the tech because we built it, right? So actually, we built the tech stack and we built everything. So we're licensing as a mother company. We actually gets you the initial. So we're licensing the tech. This is a short term kind of value creation for us. And then the equity game. So we're playing more of
When you say licensing the tech, what's the difference between it and the equity? Is it patents, you mean?
Oh, very good question. Okay. So basically, I put the copy.
No, let me just
yes.
Go for it. Okay.
Exactly. So some of the code is patent, some is not. Basically, not everything is coded. We have now actually some of the patents. What we're doing, this is another model, maybe we talked about it earlier, is basically that we go to the universities and we look for patents that actually make sense to what we're doing, and we commercialize their patents.
You acquire the patents?
Yeah, not really acquire, but basically they still keep it for themselves.
Right.
But then we use that patent to productize it, let me say, put it in a product, right? And then we commercialize it and we make it as a venture and so on and so forth. So that is one model we do.
And what's the exchange for that patent? Is it equity?
For the university, it depends. Sometimes equity, sometimes it's licensing as well. We pay them back actually, every year, right?
So it's a non-perpetual license.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that is one model, but that's not always the model. Sometimes we don't work with universities for some of the ventures. Some of the ventures we are working with universities. Some we are actually scouting for the idea ourselves. We're building from our pool of experts. You're building
your own.
Exactly. Okay. We're building our own.
And then
product.
When you say license, does that mean it's an expense on their P&L that keeps on paying for you as an annual recurring? Okay.
Yes, exactly. There you go. They can basically choose to again.
That's actually innovative, and it's very smart. And by the way, it's very difficult. I know some people are like, idea, I'll do it. Okay, go and do it.
Thank you, right? And then go ahead and test it. Go ahead and get you basically your customers. Obviously, some of the stuff we don't kind of charge you for. But this is a product which we built, a mother company built, right? So now the new company is actually using something which is IP, a propriety for the mother company. You see what I'm saying? So that's
and then when an investor comes, some of the use of proceeds is to actually acquire that IP to the company and kind of transfer it instead of it being always perpetually licensed?
That's exactly what I was getting into, the option. You have the option to kind of acquire it, or kind of with the money that you got or we got you.
Right. And the fund that is injected into that startup.
Exactly.
Part of the use of proceeds is to actually pay you for that code or whatever kind of IP that you have built, and just acquire it completely.
There you go. Exactly. So that's kind of how the model it is. So from that perspective, we have a short term already gains in terms of value, and we have a long-term gains because we have equity in the company itself.
Right.
So whenever you have your liquidation event, we're also actually benefiting from that. And obviously, hopefully, you're going to raise the valuation of the company. It's not going to stay as is, right? So we're having an upside in there as well. So that's basically kind of the model of the venture studios. We're playing on both sides, right? On actually the short-term and the long-term from that perspective. And then we kind of we're really bringing in people to pay ourselves also. You see what I'm saying?
Of
So
course.
when bring in the investors and kind of like they see something actually in one venture or something like that, that is to kind of like also make sense that there is kind of like, circle in that perspective.
Yes.
And then also, by the way, the new CEOs can choose to continue benefit from the services of the venture studio or not.
So if they want to use a CFO, you want to use purchasing, you want to use...
Exactly, yes. If they want to use those fractional services, which we already have, they can. If they want to hire... And
it's also expenses in their P&L?
Of course.
So they pay you for that.
Exactly. Yes. Once it's spin-off, and once basically the legal entity is legal, it's okay. They're a separate entity now. They take their own decisions. They have their own P&L. They have their own expenses. Whatever kind of like, agreement between us is going to be obviously like, on a financial kind of like transaction basis.
On a case-to-case basis.
Exactly. On a case-to-case basis. Exactly. That's
right.
But we are there. We are there as a support. They know actually like, that we know
it's
them.
Like now they're adolescents now.
Exactly.
And anytime they want to come back home, they can. It's fine. But they want to move out, they can move out.
There you go. Exactly. Right. That's exactly the point. Like we know you. We know how to support you and everything. But it's your own decision, Like you take basically all the decisions and we're here only to support you. As you said, you're more an adolescent right now. You're not a baby anymore, right?
Exactly.
So that's the idea. It's an interesting model because it's not there a lot in there, especially in the region. A lot of people kind of like have their own, they're having a little bit of misconceptions or like, they're not very strong believers into them. But I think it's just because we didn't know yet how to do it well. And we don't have some very successful, there are actually one or two kind of like, successful venture studios in the region, but it's just not as common as kind of like the startups, the direct startups, which basically people are seeing. So
what's the biggest challenge that you see for this model, whether you're facing it or not facing it, but you're managing it?
I think it's awareness. It's just kind of
From
like,
who?
Awareness to the LPs, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So okay, a lot to unpack. I love how, okay, let's have things sink in for a second, right?
Sure.
We started with incubators, which is where someone has an idea, a PowerPoint slide, they come, they just go in and they just start doing things. And it's sort of quote unquote a model based on training.
Yes.
So they pay,
100%.
whatever. So, and then they graduate into going into the accelerators, which now they have something that they want to crash time instead of just learning things.
They usually have team also. Like usually here you have like two people instead of just one, by the way. So that's
the
kind of
founders.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
So, and then you go into accelerators, and venture studio is when they actually build all the way, and then they venture and become adolescents, let's say, and move on to
100%.
life.
And all of this, I'm speaking about basically the model that ENTROGX Ventures kind of like adapts, which is we build in and then we basically bring the people as a co-founder. There is another model for venture studios also where actually, you as a founder, you already have something and you come into a venture studio to kind of like, benefit from their services.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically the tech stack and the administrative stack that I talked about, the client base or the partners base and so on, you come in and it's more of long term. Now it's not like, 6 months or like, the accelerator.
Right.
It's more
Can
of
be
like,
probably 18 months. Or...
There you go, year and a half, 2 years, maybe something like that,
months,
agreement. And then you're basically more of like, hey, help me kind of like, really get this out there and so on. And this is also a model where actually some of the venture studios take. We do not take that actually model, but this is something also existing.
This is something because you can crash all three into one and then it becomes a really sophisticated, high adrenaline, high octane sort of venture studio, right?
Absolutely.
Very concentrated, very focused.
Absolutely.
Now let's visualize the ecosystem. So you have the venture, the startup in the middle. You have the founders here who are injecting value into it. You have the clients and customers. You have the competitors and sort of incumbents. And then you have the regulators and you have the government that kind of oversees these relationships. And finally, obviously, you have the resource providers, the investors, the VC, the institution, all of that. And this is sort of this. Now, what we've described is another sort of ambidextrous area, which is not everybody uses it, but this is where you're seeing the awareness of it within the ecosystem. And in my personal view, an instrumental foundational and fundamental role it plays, the awareness of them, and how important and critically actually important it is to the whole VC ecosystem, or let's say startup ecosystem. Let's talk about these two, which is the regulators and sort of policy makers, within that domain. And let's say venture studios, who has funds.
Yes.
In this case, you have to establish a fund. The fund has to have some sort of obviously compliance, which is at the highest levels, because you must have LPs or some sort of investors who will put in the fund. What's the complexity there?
Very good question. Okay, so thank God we live in UAE. I mean,
Amen.
That's basically where things get a bit easier, which is not actually anywhere else. Because, for example, there is something actually very new in DIFC, in Dubai International Financial Center, where it's called a Venture Studio License, literally.
Really?
So,
I never know this.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly, which is very recent, by the way.
Which allows it to actually have a fund?
It allows you in a way
in a private
act,
placement sort of
exactly,
thing, right?
yes, to act as basically like, you have a fund. Obviously, it's not going to be the same kind of like structure as a fund,
As a
which
VC,
is kind of like exactly as a VC. But then it allows you to basically like, build those companies and kind of like have the LPs coming in into your license of venture studio, right? And kind of like, I would say allocate.
In exchange for what? Because there's no equity, right?
Very good question. So again, here there are two models. So there are people actually like, who would have the SPV, for example, where basically those investors come into this venture studio license and have an equity.
So SPV is a specific vehicle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry again. I just ran with it.
A specific purpose or specific purpose vehicle.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which is one of the vehicles of how do you structure things. So your investors or your LPs could come into that actually, and they take an equity in that SPV.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
With that license.
So you take an equity from the SPV,
yes,
which is then financing and funding the whole venture. Okay.
There you go. Exactly. That's kind of like, the common kind of like structure for now. But there is also some other people who would be like, saying, you know what, let's basically have the venture studio license as is, where actually we just can create new companies with it. And this is obviously has a process and kind of like a board of approval and so on. And also the authority, by the way, needs to kind of like know what you're building.
Of course.
Kind of like,
because there's regulations, there's compliance, there's sort of,
there you go. And then we have a fund completely separate, which is a fund structure, which is an LPGP, and they have their own separate IC, but we just have more of like, preferential kind of like, I would say allocation. No, not allocate. Preferential because the tech is proprietary first and then external. What does that mean? It's a fund, it's an external fund, but then it's linked to that venture studio where basically they first kind of like, put the checks in whatever the venture studio kind of like comes out. And this one helps because like the IC is completely separate. It's more kind of like, you have a certain governance framework that's actually solid and so on. Investment committee, I see. Yes, exactly. You would need to do that a lot.
It's fine. I know. I have a knack for, I'm very specific about words. So I'm just trying to kind of entertain our experts, the audience.
Thank you for doing that. Exactly. So you would have a certain governance framework that's solid this way. You do it this way. Obviously, it's some people would prefer simplistic kind of like direct way. Some other wants to kind of like have the fund completely separate, a fund manager that's completely separate. But that fund manager will invest first into the venture studio and then anything else. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like,
as per the regulation, is it 1% here or is it?
What is it, the 1%? It's 2% usually.
2%.
The
fund manager.
Fees?
No, the fund manager to invest first.
Oh, no, the GP commitment you're talking.
Yeah, GP commitment. Yeah.
It's usually 1% to 2%, yes, in terms of like how you put in that
in a fund. Yeah.
So, and then you have the 2% management fees, and then you have the
So
carry.
now you're talking about, exactly. So all of those are the fees or the business model of the entire say fund structure.
I'm again saying, this is for the fund structure, and I'm saying how usually venture studios work with their fund if they establish a fund. They either establish it completely separate or as part of, as I mentioned, the SPV that actually like,
Right. So the SPV, which is going to be as if it's a company that has equity, and this equity share is shared with the investors. What you're saying is there's another fund, and this fund buys equity from the SPV, and then the LPs put it in the fund, or is it completely two
different ways?
Models.
Two different models, yes.
Of fund disbursements and sort of,
of fund disbursements.
So you're saying that venture studio, because you don't have entities under it, as in LLCs that has equity structure, that has sort of ownership structure, therefore you have an SPV, and this SPV owns everything around it. What you said, the kind of the P&L of P&Ls, the mother
Exactly.
of P&Ls,
The virtual,
right?
yeah.
And then that SPV is here, and then all of those kind of quote unquote investors or LPs own.
There you go.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
You got what I'm trying to
And
say.
that's
a
how model of the sort of venture studio, because
Exactly.
otherwise if you LLC everyone, then it's meaningless and probably it will just be a waste of resources.
And you don't know, right? You don't know if we said basically you have some KPIs and criteria for you to actually LLC some of the ventures, right? So you need to first kind of like test, in a certain umbrella first before you LLC it, or before you kind of like, say, okay, now it's
what if you LLC?
What if?
What if you LLC?
You can do that, but then it's gonna be waste of resources, waste of money, and waste of time, right? If things don't work. But if things work, and you've done it early, that's good for you. What I'm trying to say is that you could be creative with the way you structure it, just to kind of like, benefit from the resources of the venture studio and benefit from the capital before the times that actually comes in. When you have new investors for just that new venture, okay, go ahead and LLC. You see what I'm saying?
Here's how my mind works, and just I'd love to explore this with you. Let's say we have the fund, not an SPV, a fund, right? A typical fund, okay?
Typical fund.
And then every new venture is actually an LLC.
Okay.
But the fund has, let's just be very creative in our numbers here. The fund has, let's say, 20% or 25% ownership of that LLC from the get-go, right? And you have 10% ESOP, which is the employee shares pools, which is the kind of 10% of the company.
Go for it, Osama. ESOP, what is it? Employee shares
option pool. Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. Were you testing or you're reminding me? But either way, I'm happy. I'm happy.
I'm just reminding you because now it's a thing, right?
It's a thing. Yes, we have to remind ourselves. Exactly. I mean, this acronym pool. Trust me, I have somewhere where every time I see a new, DIFC and then there's DFSA, and I'm like,
exactly. This is a regulator. This is not the same thing.
And then there's an SCA, and then there's a CMA. Anyway, we digress. So
yes.
So I have the fund. And then the fund, let's say every time there's a new venture that comes in, you immediately LLC bank and comply. So you have the compliance element, whether if it's fintech, if it's edutech, you go to that specific competent government body that actually comply with. And then you have the banking element, which is the business account, whatever. Everybody loves WIO, right? WIO business. So that's a blessing. That's a blessing, right? Shout out. And then you have the LLC itself, whatever, free zone on mainland, whatever it is that you have to kind of register, and then have the kind of memorandum of association, right? MOA. So now with that, you have 20% for the fund, 10% ESOP, and the rest is for the co-founders. And then they start working on it. Now, the reason why I think this becomes probably a bit more, sort of the pros is more than the cons, and this is where I would like to explore with you, is that it gives sort of early maturity, but also motivation and incentives for the founders to feel that they have ownership of something. Yes, it's valueless initially, but then they know they're working towards it, and they know that they're 60%, 70%, 80% initially. If we are able to show them through your, let's say, admin stack and your CFO, model it and say, hey, if you achieve this 20% will become, I don't know, like maybe 50 million or 20 million in valuation in 3 years. So work towards that. And that goal is clear, and you have it now. Hold it. They can touch it. It's not a mirage, and so on and so forth. And then the fund itself owns the 20% of that company from the get-go. And then you can keep on adding companies. Every time you fund, let's say, I don't know, what's a 12-month runway burn rate for an early startup seed? Is it like
it depends.
500K?
Yeah, something like that.
500K.
100K to 500. Yeah, it depends on
in Dubai. 100K?
No, it depends on.
What are you living in a bunker in Karama?
No, if you're
poor
doing
guys.
It depends on what you're doing.
No, but the lifestyle and the people have to be paid.
No,
and
you're talking about basically payments. Oh, yes, 100%.
Yeah, so 500K is like if you want to bring someone who, because you need to make sure that they have commitment. They can't be an RTA employee living every day at 6:30 and then going to you and work.
100%.
It never works.
No.
You and I know it never works, especially in Dubai,
I'm
right?
talking,
getting stuck in traffic.
I thought you were talking about basically at the venture studio level, not at
No, I mean,
side.
So
That's
this
what I
is
thought.
this is what I'm saying. So they're still venture studio,
Yeah.
but then the people are 100% committed. They're doing nothing except
That's
building
different.
that.
You're
right?
talking about actually the spin-off.
Which is in your case exactly down the line the spin-off.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if we pull this forward to sort of announce that, hey, we need founders for this PowerPoint slide, quote unquote. So they haven't done anything, but then it's LLC, it's this, and we need to have the 65% allocated to a founder and co-founder. And those two people will have to work for, I don't know, through a program of 18 months. But then the first 12 months, you have to achieve A, B, C, D. Let's say an MVP, a commit SHA on GitHub, whatever. And then you have to have if it's a, B2C or B2B, you have to have these metrics. And then beyond that, you start working on the follow-on cash, which is now you have actual valuation. And then the follow-on cash, which is either primary and secondary, which will kind of do the circular financing. And then the secondaries will go back to the fund. The primary will go into the company itself. And then they can take it and run with it properly without you. But the model is not SPV from the beginning. It's actually MOA, which is Memorandum of Association, with actual equity, but the fund owns 20% of that.
You should have a venture studio now.
Why?
I'll tell you. Okay, so what you're saying is basically see, again, that's what one of the areas of kind of like, why venture studio is more of like, how do we say, a new asset class that a lot of people are kind of like, not really that familiar with, is because
absolutely the awareness part that you mentioned.
Exactly, the awareness part that I mentioned earlier, right? Because there are many ways of doing things. That's actually one thing. And the second is like, there has not been yet a proven way of like, saying this is the standard, this is what you should do, or this is how we do it, all of it. No, it's a fact. That's one thing. And then second, for example, by the way, the SPV is not, we're not creating SPVs for each company, by the way.
Yeah, it's one SPV, which is an umbrella.
Exactly. And then
that's why in my mind, when I was thinking, I was like, one SPV, the people who are working on it, they don't have a sense of ownership, and they can,
They do. I'll tell you why. Because again, if we bring you in, we're bringing you on as a venture builder, right? Or as a kind of like, a CEO for a certain kind of like, product or startup, which you would know that actually if you achieve like, what you need to achieve, it's going to be spin off and it's going to be an LLC.
But that's a maybe later sort of.
Of course.
Yeah,
you have
instead
to prove
of
yourself.
now.
Yeah, but of now, you're already taking a salary and you're already kind of like, you're having what you said, right? Basically the equity. And by the way, the equity, you're already having kind of like promised equity. And by the way, the equity is always vested, right?
Right, of course.
So that's a very important thing.
Vested meaning you can only realize it after a certain trigger and point of time.
There you go, exactly. So from that perspective, you're already protected in terms of like, you have a certain equity
your
already that you've agreed with us on it. And then obviously if you achieved more above and beyond, you have more, which is also performance-based, by the way. And if not, yes, we have that. So if you don't basically, then you see what I'm saying? So it's merit-based.
That's you bringing the corporate world into the entrepreneurship.
Very true.
You're sitting with your manager and the HR is sitting there, and then the KPIs is like your performance. I don't like your performance this year.
But like, he did more above and beyond, so give more.
Why not?
You see what I'm saying? Why not?
This is how it's supposed to be.
Exactly, this is how it's supposed to be. So this is what I'm saying. It's just kind of like, there is also another element which is very important, by the way, which is the agility. We don't want to complicate stuff, in the very beginning.
Okay,
we want to keep it kind of like, simple. Simple for them to realize something, It's very important, by the way, entrepreneurs have an ego as well. And they want to kind of like,
Don't go there.
Exactly.
Don't go there. I just visited Doers. Doers in DSO. There was an event called Doers in DSO, which is an
It
was an entrepreneurship event. I mean, it's an underdog event, although it was big and it was. But I think it didn't have enough marketing. So the marketing team take note.
Take note.
Because if you don't know about it, then they have a problem with it.
I was in care and I was in care and date. So maybe anyways.
But anyway, so I went around the thing, and entrepreneurs are like sitting there, kind of presenting their own in the exhibition, and I've noticed ego.
Exactly.
Massive ego.
And sometimes you have to play with it. You have to kind of like, I would say help them have the quick wins. You see what I'm saying? And it's very, very important. Exactly.
Coach them,
Yes. Not necessarily coaching, but what I'm talking about is like help them win early. Otherwise, they're gonna fed up and they're gonna say like, I don't have any control. It's not something like, I'm not seeing kind of like the output that I'm putting, effort into. This is why the agility aspect is important and keeping it simple is important, especially in the beginning. We want to help them, like, see, you own that KPI, you actually made that KPI work, you actually, got something, and then now that's proven and you've proven the idea, okay, go ahead and LLC it and kind of take it. I think that aspect as well is we're playing on all aspects of okay, framework, legal, but also psychological aspect.
There's the quantitative element, but also there's the qualitative and psychological element, which I'll tell you, the pragmatic.
It's just a point. If you basically LLC it from the beginning and you bring on the founder from the very beginning, you're putting the legal, the financial burden on them as well, alongside the customer and the product.
Yeah.
So it's kind of we're not really de-risking we're not providing what we actually told you we're going to provide from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Which is
so this is where I think one of our differences or conflicts now that we will just fight. I think in my the pragmatic in me and how they say the disciplined sort of, I don't want to say ruthless, but hey, I said it, so whatever. Entrepreneurship, and I was sitting with Philip the other day, and he and I know he said it multiple times. It's like entrepreneurship is the kind of working day and night all the time for at least 10 years for a potential win. Mm-hmm. And if you're not signing up for that, then you're not an entrepreneur and you're wasting my time. This is my words, right? Mm-hmm. Not his. What I'm trying to say is entrepreneurship, it's like the Olympics of how you do professional world or business. Mm-hmm. You want to venture into an entrepreneurship. So, I disqualify actual clients more than I actually qualify them, because I sit with them, and sometimes, and I said it multiple times, and now it's in the public, I sometimes ask them, hey, you know what, let's have coffee on a Saturday morning and discuss your project. If they say, oh no, it's a weekend, okay, so you have a concept of weekend, okay, good for you. You know what, you're not an entrepreneur, you're an employee in disguise. And I say it with all the love in the world, because if you're not ready for the Olympics, the fact that you're actually going to the gym an hour in the morning, you bench press, 100 kilos, doesn't qualify you to be even nowhere near the Olympics. And this is, I've said it multiple times, so don't pretend, right? So it will have to be real. This is a real world. You're actually contributing to the economy. 100%. So feelings, kind of, I feel this, I don't like it, yeah, okay. Do it, but don't come near investors. Don't come near professionals like you and me who are actually on a Sunday morning working, having meetings from 7 a.m. Don't come near any of those people. Do it on your own. I'm not saying, we will root for you, but don't waste our times, right? And I know I sound rude. I know I sound kind of rough around the edges, but I better tell people now this rather than, like we started our talk, them being hit by reality after it's too late, right? Because entrepreneurship is a matter, and this is where I don't take too much attention, or I don't pay too much attention to the psychological element of, they might fade away. No. I'll tell you what, and I'm not digressing. This is part of the same thing. So
I see where you're going.
I'm building a sort of I've built, and I'm working with multiple kind of countries on national entrepreneurship initiatives in the region, and working with heads of states and ministries. And I'm pushing for a concept because, entrepreneurship is like hiring and firing in organizations. It's the predictor of your growth and corporate performance, your hiring and firing. Because if you're hiring the right caliber, then you're on the good track. It's not training. It's actually the hire. Because if you're hiring the bad, that's it. People are people, right?
And you're poisoning already.
And you're poisoning it is what it is. So you have to be very careful, and people have to pay very conscious and deliberate attention to the way they onboard and select their own talent and their own employees. And similarly, when it comes to entrepreneurship, now if someone is coming from a second generation wealth person, wealth people and family, and they have their own, of course, good for them, that's different, right? I'm talking about someone who's actually asking for resources, and they don't have resources, and they want to ask for help, whether in kind or in sort of cash.
Yes.
One of the criteria of selection is what I call fit and no debt. And by fit, I mean they need to know, and I know you laugh at this, but I mean it. I haven't yet got it approved, but I'm getting there. They have to be able to do at least 25 push-ups, 10 squats, and 10 pull-ups, and they have to be non-smokers and zero debt, including credit cards and everything else. So that's the floor of them being accepted, because that proves two things. That proves discipline, and that proves that they actually need what they're working for. It's not just a lifestyle of, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. They romanticize about all of those sort of news articles and everything else. So that's the first step. The second step is, which is part of the national initiatives, is has to be curriculums that they have to study, like the CFA, like others, but it's not international, it's local, that they have to study and they have to get tested on, and they have to pass with a certain grade that is well above the passing grade. So let's say 80 or 70% to even then qualify to be in the sort of selection. And obviously they have to select, let's say the top, 100, 200, 300. And the selection is according to national tracks.
Which is the education, the awareness aspects that actually we've talked about earlier. And it's very important. But I think also what you said kind of like, on the character aspect is very important, by the way. Especially on the fit side, there are now kind of like, something called entrepreneurship islands, which is like, in Bali and so on, where actually like they come in and it's all about like, how you build your entrepreneurial life in a certain discipline, which is like, around being fit and around kind of doing meditation in a certain way and so on, and then working in a certain area. So I totally agree with that. The debt one, I don't agree with, because there are a lot of people actually who start with a debt actually, or start kind of like with, not the debt, but more of a credit, I want to say, kind of like they say, I'm going to take a loan to start something or whatever. And it's part of the entrepreneurial risk-taking kind of like,
Granted. I'll do it. So the debt part, the debt part. So in my financial sort of annex, the debt part is, it has to be.
I see what you're saying. You're more of discipline.
Because if you're not financially disciplined, because even if you have debt, okay, submit your papers, submit your sort of due diligence, and let's see. If your debt is because you had to go to the Maldives and you had to take a 20K,
no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people who actually start their entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, but if you have an education debt, if you have, that's...
Yeah, of course. So what I want to say is that basically, yes, you're trying to say that the entrepreneur need to have a certain character, right, and certain traits for them to kind of like, really succeed or not in their journey. And you can see that definitely in terms of the selection criteria, whether you are incubator, accelerator, or venture studio, or VC as well, as an investor,
as
kind of like,
who does the due diligence.
Exactly. Yeah. As an investor myself, like, we look into that definitely. It's like, and we always say, by the way, we say that we invest in the founders, right? Yes. Not actually in the business itself. Sometimes the business model is going to change.
Of course.
And most probably is going to change.
It will change.
So it's really about whether you have that resilience, whether you have that grit, whether you have that perseverance.
That development engine in you.
Yeah. To kind of like, grow with your business. Again, goes back to the point that we said earlier. Are you able to grow yourself as you actually grow?
You're not at the top of the Dunning-Kruger sort of effect, thinking that you know it all, and now everybody has to be at your feet, which is not common. To be fair to everyone, but it is plagued, and I've seen it. It's not just our region. Everywhere in the world, I've seen it, that there's an element of elitism when it comes to entrepreneurship. Like people think that, I'm an entrepreneur, especially if they got institutional money. That's it. They don't care if they made it or not. To them, they made the news. They were on WAMDA. They were on this and that, and that's it.
Forbes 30 under 30.
Forbes 30 under 30, and be like, okay, that's not a bad, like I know. But it's, what? It's a good milestone, and I know that people are getting aware by the minute for it, and they're understanding it viscerally. Let's kind of pivot slightly now to the next step. Now they built something. They have sort of something to kind of put on a scale. How do you evaluate?
I actually have a panel discussion coming up literally on like how investors evaluate and how basically, and whether you look in AI startups, because everything now is in AI, but we'll talk about it later. How do you evaluate? As you mentioned earlier, and basically first about before even looking actually into so it depends, right? Sometimes actually you come in, or kind of like, the evaluation point starts from a pitch deck, or sometimes from a person first. Like, you got kind of like, a referral, or you kind of like, you're someone else will tell you, hey, by the way, I think this is kind of like under your thesis. You might want to look into that. So obviously the founder actually, to what we were saying, right? The traits, the person, the background, do they have the unfair advantage to win in that specific market and that specific area or not? What is exactly special about you? There is something also, by the way, called founder market fit, not just product market fit, but founder market fit. Why are you the best person to kind of like, take over that specific market from that perspective? I'll tell you, for example, you'd say that, I am an AI specialist. I already kind of like, worked in the
I have this degree, this theory,
exactly,
my thesis,
I
or my
worked
experience.
with the customers in this market before. I know the pain points. I have the network in this market. I've kind of like, established, I would say, a certain reputation or certain credibility within the market in there, so on and so forth. So this is very important to kind of like see the founder market fit from that perspective. And then we come into other else. Okay, so this is the founder. Who is the support system of that founder, right?
Yes.
Who is the advisor board? Who is actually like, if you have other investors before, who are these investors? And then it's very important sometimes, like, some people would tell you, I want a clean cap table. So what does this really mean? It means that actually people who are not just putting the check, but then also bringing their own network, bringing something kind of like,
quote unquote smart money, right?
Exactly. There you go. Smart money. So you also want to see who is actually really kind of like,
contributing as you're going through the journey.
There you go. Exactly. So this is the founder ecosystem from that perspective. And this is really important as well to kind of like build it strongly. And then you come into kind of like, okay, especially in the early stages, those are the most important thing. Later on, okay, we talk about the business now. Let's go. What's exactly, not the idea, what's the problem that you're solving, right?
Correct.
Before we talk about the idea, I know you have great ideas. I know you're innovative by default and everything, but it has to start from a pain point that actually your customers
has to be a painkiller to a pain, right?
There you go. That's exactly it. Because entrepreneurship will not survive on like, good to haves. It's not going to survive
they
on
call
like,
it the painkiller versus the vitamin, right?
There you go. Vitamins and supplements are not really going to kind of like, well, this is a business. This is not going to be a tech-enabled kind of like high growth thing. It's not
investors
going to
won't be interested in
there
it.
There you go. Exactly. If you want high growth, you're talking about kind of like a painkiller. You're really talking about pain points actually in there. You've tested it, you've seen it, you've confirmed it with people that actually this is a pain point, and you've measured it as well. If you've measured it and basically like, I don't know, people are wasting like, 3 months to do this thing. And that 3 months is actually affecting their P&L sheet again or whatever it is. If you've measured the pain point as well, it's not just qualitative, but it's actually quantitative. That's fantastic. So you start there. You start basically like, by the pain point. Now, okay, you've got basically the pain point. You understand it. You're the perfect person to solve it, and you have the ecosystem around it. How are you solving? Show me that it's innovative. Show me that it's actually something already there in the market, and kind of like, whether it failed or succeeded, you need to kind of like show the differentiation, right?
Yeah.
Your market analysis, your competitor advantage, your USP, your all of that, basically from that perspective. How does this solution make you different and make you going to take that market outside, right? And then now I'm talking about the market. Show me that this market is growing. I don't want to invest in something that is dead from that perspective. Okay, it's a great pain point, great solution, but the market is really too small. This is not going to exactly TAM. It's not going to be unicorn then. Why would I invest?
Total addressable market.
Yes, thank you. We said we're gonna have to.
Right.
Exactly. So it's all about the TAM, right? What's the total addressable market here? What's exactly the market that I'm getting my money into?
Because there's no point in having a TAM of, let's say, 20, 30 million.
There you go.
And you're aiming for 50 million. I'm like, come on.
Exactly. You cannot. By default, this equation does
mathematically
not.
it's wrong.
Exactly. If you know a bit of calculus, you would know that this doesn't work. So that's exactly it. So now, okay, you have a great solution. Does this solution going to really kind of like take portion of a big market? That's what I want, right?
Right.
And then the other thing is that, okay, you've talked about the market. You have all your kind of like some TAM and everything. Now, why now? Why do you think that actually this idea, this solution in this market, and with you as a founder, is going to win now? That could be regulation, that could be market trends, that could be kind of like, consumer behaviors that actually are changing and going somewhere else. That could be future projection of like, how the world is going to look like in kind of like, a certain vision that you're having. Whatever it is, why now? Why do you think that this idea makes sense? Because some amazing ideas could be really there and could be meaningful, but they're just not in the right timing, and that's why they didn't win. So for us as investors, we really want to understand your logic or your rationale around thinking that this is the right time to actually launch this idea and take it further, right? So this is very important. And this is, by the way, I see it's a lot missing in the pitch decks, which is the why now.
Yes.
So this is very important from
the
that
urgency and
perspective.
criticality today, the significance of the problem and its solution.
There you go, 100%. And then comes all the metrics now. Now, basically, like, be ready with your financial models, with your projections, be ready with basically like, your
a small
value
POC,
model.
probably a small teaser.
We'll come into that. But I'm talking here about the metrics. I'm talking about kind of like, tell me first, basically from the perspective of like, I am raising 1 million to do this and this and this and this and that.
Right, the use of proceeds and how you're gonna, okay.
Yeah, how you're gonna do it. What's basically, again, I'm talking about the financial model as in like, what? I'm going to do 1 million in ARR this year, this is my growth is 100%, whatever it is, you see? So all of this is important from the perspective of like, also, I can see the financial trait and the financial literacy, exactly, in that perspective. And I'm not just throwing money again into something, but it's something
This is where
logical.
founders' financial literacy is very important.
100%.
And usually people run away from it because 100%. It's uncomfortable.
And this is also where comes your business model, the pricing strategies, and
of course, because it all feeds into it, right?
Exactly, it's
your
all
expenses, your income.
Yeah, so you need to be really aware of that. You cannot kind of, again, throw just prices like that, right? You need to have a study around it and why you're pricing at certain range.
Benchmarking, whatever.
Exactly, all of that. So this is really important. Like, this financial literacy aspects, I need to see it in
So the finance element, the accounting element, and the commercial element.
Absolutely. And then also maybe a little bit actually before that is the GTM, the commercial element.
The go-to-market,
The go-to-market, exactly. How are your distribution channels strong
and
enough?
How are you establishing that strong market pull to kind of double down or test or kind of have multiple hypotheses. So you're able to test them, and then whatever stick, you can go to it.
Absolutely. This is very important, by the way. A lot of people kind of like don't think about it as in like, they say, oh, I'm just going to kind of like put my product out there. The market people are going to come.
I'm going to do a couple of meta ads and people just run on it.
Meta ads. Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Come on. You need to
I love it. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly. You really need to have strong kind of like go-to-market channels. Yes, a strategy.
Like a strategy, you have clear channels, clear market acquisition plans.
Exactly.
That then one of the pillars could be, performance marketing or whatever. If that, and it could be anything else.
It could be something else as well, depending on the model. It would be
could be traditional, billboards on the street, whatever.
We never know, exactly. So you really have to have a strategy around that. How you're going to basically have your distribution in place and go to market.
Which goes
and who are your partners, maybe also for go-to-market strategy. You might not be the one actually doing everything, and you already have kind of like a leverage that you could kind of like, I would say
which
lean
is
into.
Very important and very strong, especially in B2B.
Absolutely. Especially in B2B. Oh, yes, absolutely. Especially in B2B, and we're already kind of like using that from that perspective.
Because you have to scale that scalability.
And you have to make it easy for your clients to find you. So you really need to kind of like think about it from that perspective. So so basically the GTM, the financials are important and so on. And then basically what you're talking about, which is the product demo, especially nowadays, is very important because it's so easy to kind of like create a product.
In a weekend, you can do it with Lovable or whatever. Yeah.
So don't be lazy. Show something.
Even Figma now has interactive models.
Even Figma, correct. Even Figma, you don't need a designer for that.
No.
Figma is like anyone can do it. Literally, go there, whatever you want.
Have your
even not Figma, you can take to ChatGPT. Give a sketch, literally, and you put that sketch
and
actually.
It'll give you a
image.
JavaScript that has almost, at least you can. I mean,
exactly.
It's not as easy as we make it sound. Still, you have to know some coding.
I agree.
But because otherwise, it'll give you some sort of slop that you think it's working, but then it's not. But still, it's not. It's not 3 months. It's probably a couple of weekends, and that's it.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. Some people even make it in PowerPoint. By the way, they kind of like the demo images or something like that. But I want to see what's your vision of like how do you want people to use kind of like that application of yours. So that's very important. If you want extra points, have a product roadmap, right? That's a product
extra points.
I mean,
I would say that's core points. Because remember,
it depends on which stage. Again, we're talking early stage, right?
Even if I'll tell you what. So okay, I agree with you.
Sometimes it's non-technical founders, and they're doing Figma. You wouldn't expect kind of like product roadmap from the very beginning. But the people who are kind of like giving product roadmap, I know this is someone kind of like serious.
I love when someone brings a product roadmap and has all of those sort of, how do I say it, features, but mapped on a timeline with clear sort of development roadmap that leads into a milestone of releases, let's say, and the releases are disciplined every quarter. I release first these. So the first kind of set of features will be sort of very minimal, very limited, but then the next I'll release this, and then I'll release this. And it's actually matrixed with regions and features. So it's like, okay, this feature is with this region on this date, this feature with this region on this
depends on
date.
your strategy, overall strategy, right? Also, if you kind of like, you want to get into a new market, and that market, Arabic is kind of like, the language, not English, which you had originally, you need a new feature
You need
of translation, right?
Exactly.
Before you get into that market. So obviously, like, you need to show me that you're sophisticated.
There's thought that went into it.
Exactly. You're a sophisticated entrepreneur in that place, right? And kind of like, you've thought around it. There is a rationale. There is kind of like, a thought process, as you said, behind it. So that's kind of like, the thing. And then obviously, how am I going to make my money back? That's also, I personally, a lot of investors kind of like, this is a debate. Where should you talk or should you not talk about exit strategies, right? But I would,
really?
yeah. There are some people kind of like,
why is this a debate?
Wait, I'll tell you
it's
how.
It's not charity or grants, right?
Of course it is.
I mean, my $1 has to turn into $3 in, I don't know, like 3 years.
Of course. But there are some people.
That's my exit strategy.
There are some people who say, like, in the pitch, don't talk about it unless you're asked. So, and there are others tell you, no, you have to kind of like focus. From me, it's needed to be there. Like, how am I going to make my money back? And what's your plan for that, right?
You said something a moment ago, which this very feature of the slide deck or the pitch deck makes it important, which is creating an asset class.
Yep.
Right? If I'm an investor and I'm putting my money and I'm having choices, and by the way, I always tell my entrepreneur friends, you're not competing with that other entrepreneur. You're competing with gold, with real estate, with public markets, with other kind of asset classes. So if you're not able to show clearly how your today will be better, your tomorrow will be, let's say, 3x of today, in a forecasted way. I mean, granted, everything is forecast and future kind of predictions.
Exactly, yes.
But at least you're aware of it and you're talking, because that's why they're giving you money. They're not giving you money because they care about anything. I mean, they might say whatever, sustainability, they might say whatever. But at the end of the day, they're called investor for a reason, right?
Yes. Oh, yes, 100%. Absolutely. So this is very important. Like, for me, exit strategies, like, what's your plan to exit, right? Some people, and that exit, by the way, could be in itself an IPO, could be like, it doesn't have to be always acquisition, it could be secondaries, whatever. Like the valuation, telling me that actually the valuation is going to increase. And by this time, you would actually have 2x or 3x what you invested. You see what I'm saying? And so whatever it is, you need to show, and usually you can show kind of like, 2-3 paths. It doesn't have to kind of like be just one, obviously, but at least, again, have a thought process around it, right?
At least you thought about it.
Exactly.
So you're able to kind of instigate that discussion.
Yes, exactly. And you can kind of like, see or give confidence. Right.
Yes, that's the word. Confidence coming from competence, not from charismatic, performative
Oh, yes, absolutely. It comes from you showing basically that your craft. That's it, literally. So
360, the whole rounded sort of
100%.
craft, not just a coder or a kind of a bioengineer.
Yes, absolutely. So so exit strategy is very important from that perspective.
Agreed.
And then
if you're raising money, let's be very clear, right?
Yeah. Of course, if you're raising money. So that's something basically that you want to kind of like, show in to the investors when you're actually looking into it. I think last thing here is basically like, you want to touch into when you have the team kind of like, slide at the end of the day.
Yes.
Is again, the what I said earlier, the founder market fit that you want to show, right? The unfair advantage that you have as a team and as advisors over anyone. We talked earlier about why now and kind of like, how we do it. But then usually in the team slide or the team kind of like, when you're telling the story and you're telling me here is who I am, but basically talk about your background. And your background doesn't have to be only just kind of like what you did before the corporators. I mean, it could be even a personal story, by the way. Yeah. And that personal story or motivation or what ignites really kind of like, the entrepreneurial spirit in you. That could be it. So please tell us about actually your personal stories. And by the way, investors at the end of the day, they are people, by the way. So you back to what we said early on, EQ and emotional kind of like intelligence. You also need to play into that and try to find kind of like, I would say kind of like the areas where you relate to each other from that perspective as well.
Right.
So talk about your corporate career or your startup career if you're an exited founder and all, but then also talk about your personal stories. Why is this problem mattering to you? And why
Personally,
is
yeah.
this exactly personally, or why is this solution kind of like,
Because that gives confidence in that you're not going to tap out, next round. You're actually in it because there's a purpose behind it.
Exactly.
And that purpose is linked to your character, to your experiences, to your sort of...
It's to who you are, right?
Yes, okay,
it's now
exactly.
part of your entire kind of like identity, let me say.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that is important, by the way.
That's important. And that gives infinite amount of confidence to the investors, because they know, like you said, they invest in the founder, and they know that the founder is invested in this idea because it touches their own identity and their own experiences, right?
Exactly.
So you know what? It's beautiful the way you just kind of laid down the entire sort of blueprint of entrepreneurship from start to end and everything in between. Now, and you talked about evaluating the startup, evaluating the founder, and we talked about the quantitative elements, the numbers, the go-to-market, the strategies, the plans, everything else. And I'll add also the talent acquisition. So sometimes I ask my clients, add pictures of people you've spoken to that you will acquire as part of your use of proceeds, because if they see that the business development director of IBM is actually interested in joining the startup, and the use of proceeds will go to them, and they actually have that interest in the startup, that will add also to the kind of full positive sort of judgment over the whole idea. But now let's talk valuation. Which is, let's say, 60 million, if it's that, I know this is sort of, we usually ruffle some feathers here and we kind of be positioned in hot waters. But how do you do valuation either yourself, or how do you accept valuation from downstream VCs or investors for your own startups?
Okay, I'm a computer scientist, right? I'm an engineer. I go by math. I go by equation.
That makes the two of us.
1 + 1 = 2.
I love that.
So for valuation, there are actually some mathematical way to go for your valuation. You don't have to kind of like, just be, I would say, innovative around it. Let me say,
there's no need for too much innovation. Just 1 + 1 = 2.
Exactly,
math,
exactly.
So walk me through it. Yeah.
So for the valuation exercise, you could kind of like, go ahead on your own with basically kind of like, I would say a certain exercise of your valuation. You could, by the way, tap to like yourselves and kind of like, companies who do it based on IP or based on kind of like, stuff, and you could kind of like get into it. Or you could also have a lead investor who would kind of like, do first term sheet and kind of like, make a valuation, and you trust obviously, and maybe you've worked with them before, and they would kind of like have a valuation. They say, I'm going to put like, I don't know, 500K on a certain, on 20K or something, 20%. So this gives you a valuation. It's up to you, right? That's one thing of kind of like just how to go through it. Now, if you're doing it on your own, they've got a couple of things. So there are kind of like, the multiple way, which is the usual kind of like,
lazy way.
We have to talk about it. We need to be.
Well, no, my of course, I'll tell you what, I want to double down on that, because I've always have been these talks with really veterans here, and they vouch for it, comparables, and, and I'm like, really? That's lazy. A ChatGPT can do it for you. You go to PitchBook, or you go to Magnet, or you go to wherever, and you see it, and that's it.
And the comparables, as you said, there may be like industry multiples. It's called also sometimes, like you told, if I'm in this industry, I'll just like, this industry goes with 3 multiples. So it goes like, of EBITDA, and let's just kind of like go
God forbids AI 33x on EBITDA. And I'm like, really? And people believe you?
Exactly. I agree with you. It's one of the things basically that you might want to use if you're not sophisticated enough, I would say, that's a kind of like thing. But for me, what I usually do, by the way, is like, I usually like, take 3 or 2 valuations, at least methods, right?
A framework. Yeah.
Exactly, frameworks. And then from there, of course, kind of like put my judgments as well. I mean, we're called people in person because we have minds.
We have analysis.
Right?
We have critical thinking.
Critical thinking, what we're talking about, right? This makes sense. This doesn't make sense. You have to be able to say that.
Which goes back to my earlier 2 points. I said critical thinking, but also first principles thinking, which is what makes this product profitable in the future. If the inputs will be more than the outputs, if the revenue, the top line will be, and you're able to model it,
Exactly.
Which
exactly,
is CFO's best friend, cash flow, right?
Absolutely.
Cash flow, CFC.
So this is very important in terms of like, just put your critical thinking around it as well. Like, does this make sense to you? And by the way, you said earlier ChatGPT, but in ChatGPT is going to give you. That's actually true. ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, Perplexity can help you out with it, but you will see they will give you even different kind of like, ways of doing things. So it's for you to synthesize.
Yes, that's the
and
word.
And then
synthesize,
really basically kind of like get something out of it, right? So that's kind of like when you see. So there is kind of like the multiple thing from that. There is also what you said on cash flow, right? Again, but it depends. Discounted cash flow, they say it. So it's more of like,
How do you feel about it? DCF.
I mean,
I'll tell you what, I had really heated discussions with absolutely veteran, like I would be a Mickey Mouse compared to them. With all honesty, I'm not humble bragging, it's actually true. Investor bankers that they discounted the discounted cash flow model. And I'm like, but why? They said, because, it's meaningless. I was like, but why? Discounted cash flow is, I'm not advocating for it. I'm saying, but if this is meaningless, then multiples...
How is the value? Yeah, exactly.
Really?
How is the multiple valuation meaningful, right? If this one is meaningless. Yeah, it's different thoughts, different schools, different kind of like whatever it is. For me, I told you, I take usually 2 or 3 and see which makes sense also with my mind. So discounted cash flow, yeah, exactly. So I want to talk about this because this one is more of like, how do we say, really accounting based and kind of like, financial.
It's difficult.
Yes.
It's difficult, unpopular, sort of hard.
100%.
And most probably.
That's what I want to say.
Exactly. So it's very hard. It takes a lot of competency from many people to actually make it happen. And it takes a long time. And people feel like, you know what, let me just lose weight quickly. ChatGPT, how can I lose weight in 10 days? It's like, no, you still have to go to the gym. By the way, you still have to not eat all of those junk food and crackers.
God, tell me about it. Yeah, I always tell people there is nothing kind of like, that let's do it in 5 days or let's do it in 5. It just doesn't happen. And that's exactly part of it, like the lazy valuation or the quick valuation. But anyways, again, you're asking me what are the valuation methods? I'm answering based on that.
Hats off.
I'm not giving any opinions here. Exactly.
Politically correct. Shada is being politically correct here.
Exactly.
She's obviously probably evaluating something and someone important. Okay, go on, sorry.
I am not getting into the opinionated aspect.
Right. I agree.
So yeah, so like, okay, so there is the multiples, there's discounted cash flow, as I mentioned. And then I think actually this is because I'll tell you why. I liked what you said because you said it's very hard, it's very unpopular and so on. It's because like, we need more finance people to be entrepreneurs. Because this is something that I don't see that much. It's like, usually the entrepreneurs, the people who are taking risks and stuff and so on, they don't want to be held off by the financial kind of like, how do we say, discipline.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? And the people who have the financial discipline, they tend to be more of like, they are not the positive looking about the world.
The CFO is the guy who just grounds everybody as like, you can't do this, you can't do that. Yeah.
No, there is a risk here. There is kind of like something. No, we cannot.
They assign an amount, a discount, a whack, a weighted average of cost for every single risk.
Exactly.
Right.
So this is why you don't see the discounted cash flow actually method kind of like used that much. It's like, by nature, the entrepreneurs would want to kind of like stay away from it.
So I'll tell you what, it's the latest capital raise statistics for the GCC specifically, which was released by Magnet, 9 months to date, so year to date, 60 to 70% of capital raise went to fintech.
Oh, yeah.
And I was speaking to multiple people. I was like, I haven't seen it anywhere. And why didn't anyone think about it? But don't you think the reason is because I'm fintech, vis-a-vis, I come from the financial industry. You're an investor, institutional investor. Obviously, you are the financial capital industry. We speak the same language. Therefore, I'm able to take more money from you. Therefore, fintech is the highest has the lion's share when it comes to venture capital early on, because you don't have a remember, bigger PE and others, it doesn't exist. Why? Because they have CFOs, they have armies of people that do all sorts of analysis and data room preparations and due diligence indexing and all of that. But small guys don't. But therefore, fintech people, I'm a fintech person, meaning I am, as a founder, know exactly my way in and out. I can get myself in trouble or not by using spreadsheets and models and DCF, for, God forbid I say, so, and you're also from that industry. So I'm able to speak the same language. Therefore, there's that bias that allows me to think that I have more merit or I have more potential, and therefore you will give me more. And that's why 70%.
That's a very good perspective. I haven't thought of it actually before, which is kind of like, the similarity of
the likability bias, right?
Exactly, the likability bias between the fintech founders and the investors, which could be there. That's actually very true. But then also, whether we like it or not, fintech is actually very, 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 very rewarding. You see what I'm saying?
Is it?
Yes. In terms of kind of like long term, yeah.
But isn't it crowded?
I think it's crowded, definitely. It's crowded.
Because it's a basic economic supply and demand when everybody's jumping.
No. The thing is that it's why investors are putting money in fintech, right? Because they see the growth and they see kind of like, people will always want better way of like spending or better way of like, saving or a better way of
but you can make the same argument with almost anything now. I mean, my wife,
we have two unicorns in like Tamara and Tabi,
that's
which is kind of like fintech.
Well, again, I'm not saying this is my opinion and my perspective. Obviously, it's anecdotal. It's not. I would love to have a research done on it, and I'm happy to kind of champion that research.
Sure. I think we need the research.
But the concept is at least anecdotally the correlation is uncanny. It's just so clear, because when you talk about this is how I think of it, right? Financial sector is a value transfer industry. It's like the real estate sector. It's a financial transfer. It's a value transfer industry. You don't create value. You just transfer value
from one person to another, or from one entity to
exactly.
another.
So you're actually so, at an instrumental level, at a foundational level, you're not creating value. You're not adding value to the economy because you're just transferring.
I don't agree with this.
How?
Okay. I mean, you're creating value. If you're basically putting a marketplace and I can do my transactions easier, safer, or kind of like, in an again, discounted banner like the Tabi Tamara thing, this is a value for me. You see what I'm saying?
No, I know, but I mean, from an economic perspective, there's two types of industries. There are industries that are value transfer and industries that are value creation, like agriculture, for example.
I see what you're saying. You're talking, from.
So of course, there's value creation and everything, but I'm meaning from an industry and sector. Education, for example, is a value creation because you're creating a workforce that actually will contribute positively and meaningfully.
You're basically making the rich richer and kind of like the poor poorer.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. So from an investor perspective, I would want not just to kind of fulfill from this cup to this cup and from this cup back to this cup. I want to create value out of nothing and therefore there are infinite number of other industries that are being created now. Obviously AI is one of them. I mean, let's be very real. I mean, with all the hype and the bubbles and everything else, it's still very real. Education is one of them. Government tech is one of them.
Oh yes, government tech.
Yeah, I agree. And you will. I mean, I'm baffled by the amount of governments. Obviously, government. There's no shortage of government cash with government anywhere in the world, right? Anywhere, even the poorest countries. At least it's the kind of highest.
100%.
So you have lots of government tech. You have lots of edu-tech. You have lots of. Obviously, deep tech, generally speaking, I know it's harder because it needs a lot of capital investment, but still, it's something that's important. Those can create value to the investors far and beyond what finance can. But that's the bias I'm talking about. You see something and understand that, therefore, it has more value.
Yeah. No, I see your point, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I see your point, which is kind of like, he's talking at the level that I want them to talk at, right? And then I see basically kind of like, the mutual understanding, I would say.
Yes.
So let me invest in this and kind
because
of like,
I understand it, right?
Yeah,
because I understand. I mean,
but if I don't understand education, if I don't understand agriculture, then why would I get into it?
It's very difficult. It's very, and
and usually the people who have money are kind of like finance people as well, or maybe like,
Or the GPs or the fund managers, the kind of investment bankers, the LPs, the LPs maybe are there, but they don't see these things, right? True. They have fund managers who invest in their and advisors
on their behalf,
so they don't see it. But the people in the middle, and that's actually a research I'm just doing now, is that sort of the kind of inverted pyramids sort of model where you have all the kind of investors and the kind of LPs and the high net worth individuals and the ultra high net worth individuals and the sovereign wealth funds and all of those people. And then you have all of the kind of value creators, the founders, all of those sort of creators of those ideas and builders.
Yeah.
But then in between, you have the VC and PE market, which is governed and gatekept rightfully so, it has to be because of regulations, because of anti-money laundering, because of counter, terrorism financing and all of those sort of measures. But by those people that then they're all coming from the financial sector. They all are ex-Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan or Bank of America and therefore they only understand spreadsheets, but then talk to them about that industry or this industry or that depth of the operational pragmatism of that industry, they probably will doze off. They won't understand. And therefore you will have that bias. How to solve it? I'm working on it.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. I also think that, as I mentioned earlier, still the ROI perspective is there because there is always a movement of money, right? There's always kind of an in and out. And people, by the way, people like to play where money is. So if basically you're assorting yourself with finance people or the finance gurus, you kind of make sure that you're going to get money. You see what I'm saying? So it's they always tell you solve the rich problems.
Rich man's problem. Yeah,
the rich man problems, exactly. So it's that aspect, but then I also see your point definitely. It's they understand finance, they understand each other. There is that bias of likability. Let's go together.
Which goes back full circle to our starting discussion of competency of the founders, and specifically when it comes to financial literacy, and specifically if you're not from the financial sector.
By the way, actually, there's something I wanted to speak about, which now we already get into it, which is as a founder, you need to speak to your investor the language that actually they understand, right? Which is more of reverse evaluation as well, by the way. When you're doing your research and to basically kind of you want to outreach to some kind of investors, you need to know, is he someone coming from Morgan Stanley and CBC or someone coming from operation in another big agri-tech? Exactly, right? And you need to appear. I'm not saying be kind of manipulative or anything.
No.
But I'm just saying that you need to speak their own language.
You need to be relevant.
Exactly. If someone is more operational, okay, speak more about your operation. Speak how your operation is lean, how you're you're not really
your
kind of
supply chain is locked.
Exactly. How you have an advantage over there and so on and so forth. If someone is more financial, speak more about your financial model and how your financial model is exciting and all DCF and stuff what we were talking about, right? So you really need to do also your reverse engineering. I love this thing, reverse engineering.
100%. You work backwards from your target.
There you go. Exactly. You work backward from your target. So your target is that investor. What does that investor value, right?
Yes.
Do they value the financial literacy, the operational literacy, or they value impact and more, let's do value creation in the world. Let's kind of do. And then from there, as a founder, you kind of align accordingly. So this is very important. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Where do you see this region when it comes to venture capital, startups, entrepreneurship heading? I know that there's lots of talk about unicorns. There's lots of talk about all of those initiatives. The 10,000 Emirati entrepreneurs. You have Saudi and Munshaat and all of those sort of kind of initiatives. How do you see this region progressing? And no fluff, kind of real talk. What is missing and slowing us down to actually reach to those really strong aspirational goals?
Absolutely. I think, as you mentioned, I'll start from the end, right? We have some really, really, really aspirational goals and it's showing. It's not just kind of I would say papers and stuff and nope. It's actually really attracting talent, attracting capital, attracting global basically investors and so on, attracting the global tech. I would say hyperscalers are now coming here to the region and they're saying, we want to establish data centers and we want to establish AI factories and we want to train people and we want to kind of create this more and more. The UAE is now, we want to be the capital of entrepreneurship in the world. Abu Dhabi, we're the capital of capital. You see what I'm saying? Saudi is our vision 2030. We're going to kind of make sure we're the center of AI with humane, with all those initiatives. It's really kind of moving towards something which is really big. And for us, as you said, to achieve these kind of goals, we need a couple of things, right? Mm-hmm. We don't need to move from the strategy to the tactical aspect, let me say. I see in terms of growth, we're definitely growing. We have an amazing population of youth.
Yes.
We have an amazing kind of talent that can be easily upgraded. Because I always tell this, right? I work across the Middle East and Africa, really. So I always say that we have a chance to leapfrog. We don't really need to kind of go through the stages that the West went through in terms of development or
it's amazing
civilization.
You're saying this.
Yeah, but we
'Cause
actually
everybody's saying,
have,
oh no, but Silicon Valley took 50 years. I was like, yeah, but we don't
Exactly.
why do I have to?
Thank you. We don't. I strongly believe in that. Is that we actually have a chance to leapfrog, and actually really kind of like take it to the next level quickly, more efficiently, because we are in an era which we kind of like leverage that. Really
We have leverage. Exactly. That's the word.
We have leverage. So, and then I'm going to talk about this. What kind of leverage we were talking? Again, the population, and as I mentioned, the talent, right? We can kind of like quickly upscale the talent. We have the capital,
Yes.
especially the sovereign capital. It's there, and now it's being strategically allocated.
Yes.
Right, to the initiatives which would have the diversification of the economy, and then would also pool into what we're talking here, the data centers, the AI factories, the upskilling, and creating that ecosystem.
There's
from
a
that
clear, in the
perspective.
documentation, there are clear tracks of how this will be spent.
Absolutely, absolutely. You go to Vision 2030, you see basically that how you have tracks, as you mentioned, pillars, and the KPIs, and the KPIs are very clear. I'm always like, I love KPIs. Whenever someone is like,
Hey,
talking
I love
metrics and KPIs, I'm like,
KPIs and SOPs, right?
thank you. I'm like, oh, thank you. Again, the likability bias. You're talking my language,
Yeah. It makes the two of us. Obviously, we're coming from a
Exactly.
strong corporate background, but hey, it is what it is.
There you go. So yeah, so I'm like, with that, we're creating the ecosystem. So we have the
Yes.
I don't say we have the talent, but we have the potential talent we want to be, right? I'm not saying basically that we have all the amazing entrepreneurs already in place and kind of like the AI
Well, it's a
engineers
talent
or that.
magnet anyway.
But exactly, but that's what I'm saying. We have the talent that actually could be there.
Yes.
Kind of like, the superior, I would say AI.
Superior
leverage
breed
kind
of talents,
Yes, exactly. And then we have the capital, as I mentioned. So the sovereign capital is there, and now it's being strategically allocated actually in those arenas. And then we have basically something which is, again, coming from my industry and kind of like, again, I'm putting my bias in here, which is we have the energy, we have the power, we have what it takes to power actually this ecosystem.
There's the hunger, right?
Exactly.
People are starving.
Exactly. And then this is something that you really need to, especially on the AI revolution. By the way, when you say now an AI data center or AI factory, the way they are actually measuring how big it is or how small it is by the energy.
Megawatts and
exactly,
gigawatts,
megawatts and stuff. Because it's like, how do you power it, right? It's actually what it matters. It's not about the ships now anymore.
No.
It's not about actually.
Again, first principle thinking, right? Go
Yes.
all the way to the
Yes.
basics. Okay, what is it? It's just this. Yeah.
Exactly. So you see how the tech is now talking also power. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is very important.
Went
and we have
analog.
it. Exactly. So what I'm trying to say here is like, we have a leverage in the region where actually we have all the right mix of energy
Yes.
to make sure we power this AI revolution. We have the solar, we have the traditional energy, we have
Yes.
the oil and gas, we have the wind, we have everything, whatever, basically.
Nuclear now, yeah.
Nuclear, yeah, definitely. So this is something that's actually really needed for the next thing. Now we talk about the ecosystem. I think this is where the idea we need, right? The ecosystem, we definitely need more exited founders. Exited founders not only create liquidity or create kind of like I would say the obviously the model aspect and kind of like the figure, but they create that how do we say the perpetual kind of like now knowledge that's actually coming back to the early founders. The early founders now, they're still going to the corporate people to kind of like get advice and so on. And then I see it. A lot of people kind of like, in the show, when they want to show you senior people, most of it are actually CEOs, SVBs and so on,
They
but
know
not
nothing
always exited
about
founders.
entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
Yes.
With all my respect to the CEOs and the corporate
No, this is not a
leaders,
disrespect. This is true.
Exactly.
It's fact.
But then this is
And by the way,
different-
most of my friends, CEOs and corporate people, they actually acknowledge that they know nothing about entrepreneurship. It's a completely different thing.
Thank you. Exactly. We really need more exited founders so that actually, they guide the way for the early founders with the mentorship, with the kind of like, sharing the knowledge. They went through the path, right? So they know exactly what it looks like. Exactly. They know the track. So that's something definitely we need more of as kind of like, ecosystem.
Of mentorship.
Exactly. Of mentorship from that perspective. I also think we need to do a little bit more structured work in terms of the pre-seed kind of like allocation. It's still kind of like not structured. It's more of like, angels, gated kind of like stuff. I know this one, you don't know this one.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like,
It's who's who in this massive jungle, right?
Exactly. But we need it to be more structured because it's a bottom up, right? It's like if I
it is
have...
a bottom up.
Exactly.
It cannot be otherwise.
There you go. And especially in something like that, we really need to kind of like, have those ideas supported, that's kind of like, early founders supported. A lot of people have the drive, have the entrepreneurship grit, but they don't know how to do it.
They don't know how, exactly.
Exactly. The how is very difficult.
The why is there, the what is there, it's just the how is missing. And the how is not as easy as reading a book.
Exactly.
And I always say that you cannot learn swimming by reading a book, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You need to kind of like, have something practical out there to kind of like support you through the journey. So this is why, again, we're actually the more accelerators, more venture studios, more stuff actually
it goes back to your awareness kind of problem.
Exactly, more awareness from that in the pre-seed level. And I think then the last thing, and I'm seeing more of it, is the circular ecosystem, I call it. What does it mean, circular ecosystem? It's like, I give you this, you give me this, and then the other one give something like that, right? And this is where the corporate and universities, I need them to be more involved. You see, I'm seeing like, great accelerators by certain companies or something like that.
Or by university.
Or by university. But then what is the sustainable value in there, right? Okay, you're doing this one cohort or something. How are you supporting them afterwards? Are you handing them over to an accelerator? Are you handing them over to
what's your measure? What's your KPI?
Exactly.
That you actually measure your success with.
Thank you. As a corporate,
it's
when
not
you
just
sponsor...
it's not just a couple of photos on LinkedIn and 100, 200 likes and you call it a day.
Thank you.
Oh, goodness me.
I need to see that actually kind of like, flow going over so that actually the value creation is sustainable, is kind of like there, right? The founder is not kind of like, one time supported and one photo, as you mentioned, on LinkedIn, and then gone. So here where comes kind of like all the innovation hubs, basically the corporates, the accelerators, the universities, the labs, the research labs. They can and they should basically work together in more sustainable way into like, how can we create a program that is handing over to someone else from there, and we're not just doing one-off transactional kind of like, initiatives, let me say. So that's kind of one thing. What we are having really great, and we need to capitalize on it, is the policy, kind of like the innovation in policy.
Right.
And I really, really like that. It's actually like I'm a person who's like, I always believe like, whatever I'm doing cannot be completely separated from policy. So this is why I was literally in the task force of like G20 and BRICS. I'm a person who's like, out there talking to the governments all the time.
Yeah.
We suggest and basically like, we advise or kind of like we take over from also what they are doing. So there needs to be this channel between the government and the ecosystem.
People on the ground, yeah.
Exactly. And we're doing it really great. We literally have like, sandbox for AI regulation in UAE, for example.
Yes, I know.
So that's kind of like something where...
nothing like the UAE. Let's give it to them. I mean, there's nothing like from a policy, from a government, from spearheading all of those sort of initiatives. And you see how they crash time. Instead of taking it years, it takes probably a couple of weeks or months. And then you see this policy. And if they're not sure, they sandbox it, they test it, they clearly monitor it, and then they either kill it or they kind of progress with it. It's amazing.
The leadership here in UAE is fantastic when it comes to that. Absolutely. And I really kind of like invite everyone to take it. Exactly. Invite everyone to take it as a model. This is exactly what I was going to say. Exactly. So this is very important. And I think the policymakers all across our countries really need to think that policy is not something rigid.
No.
And it's something that you can have innovation
within
the policy.
It's a living, breathing organism, organically growing with deliberation.
It has to have its own agility as well, right? And we are in a world where you need that. Like, you cannot just bring, with all my due respect to all kind of like policymakers and so on, you really need to kind of like bring the experts in, and you cannot just have only the politicians doing kind of like, the policy making now. I mean, this is something very basic, and I want to see it more and more.
Especially in entrepreneurship and innovation. I mean, everything else fine.
Yeah,
we're talking about only this.
We're talking about this. I'm not talking about anything else, right? We're talking about anything related to entrepreneurship, right?
Entrepreneurship
so I'm
and
saying
innovation.
In entrepreneurship, you cannot just rely on your own politicians to kind of like bring policy in there. You need to do exactly what UAE is doing, right? Bring us on the table, and then bring basically also those kind of like, policymakers who have the mindset of the agility, who have the mindset of like, okay, for me to bring a policy in place, I need it to be supportive for the goals that I'm actually trying. Let's sandbox it, let's test it, as you mentioned, and then we kind of like initiate it or scale. So that bridge needs to be very much strengthened, I would say, from that perspective. All in all, I think this is really what makes our ecosystem stronger. So as I mentioned, the talent, the capital, the ecosystem, the circular ecosystem, or kind of like the flow between the ecosystem as well, powering the ecosystem and kind of like making sure that we're playing our leverage in there, because with that we can bring more global tech and we can bring more kind of like, we're even seeing now the BlackRock HQs coming in here and so on and so forth.
All the AUMs are asset under management are coming here.
So play on that to bring more capital and more tech and more data centers and so on. And then last thing is actually on the policy, keep it innovative, keep it kind of like, relevant to the ecosystem, I would say, from that perspective.
So like you said, there are four main pillars to kind of propel and leapfrog this ecosystem, which is capital, culture, talent, and capital, culture, talent, and policy.
Policy, yes,
right?
Exactly.
So all of these four, you need to have them, but it's like ingredients of a dish. You can have the ingredients, but that doesn't make the dish. You still have to put it together. And by the way, you can put it together and the same ingredients and have a good dish, and you can have the same ingredients and have a bad dish. So it's like a pipeline of things that you need to keep on testing until you reach to somewhere where it's optimal, and then you keep on optimize and become relevant.
Definitely.
What's your advice to, let's say, we'll have two types of advices, one for founders and one for investors.
Before I go there, I just want to talk about AI, because it has to, we have to touch onto this.
Of course.
And then we'll go to the advice. AI is not a hype. I just want to make this clear, okay? AI is
Can you define AI?
Okay, which definition do you want, Osama?
Your definition.
Again, the computer scientist definition, or Chada the investor, Chada the entrepreneur.
The thing that is not hype.
Oh, yes. Okay, I see. Yes. What's hyped is definitely valuations, right? And kind of like, everyone's saying that I'm an AI company when actually they're just a wrapper of ChatGPT and so on. This is definitely kind of like the hype aspect. What's not hyped is I'm talking about basically the models, the pre-training, the what we're talking about, kind of like, the value in terms of like, the mathematical value of actually what we're doing. By the way, we had this technology like, while ago, from the 60s or
from the 50s and 60s,
right?
Yeah.
But the hardware was not there yet.
Actually, the generative element of it is what created the hype.
Yes.
AI has always been there. I mean,
the generative aspect, which is generative AI, and then also the productization of it. The fact that it was now productized into ChatGPT and people can just chat with it and see it. That's what it is.
The bots.
But exactly. But us as software engineers and developers and
we've
so on.
We've always done,
Exactly. We've always actually used it before as API or as something like that. And coding.
I remember people used to be very sort of surprised 6 and 10 years ago when they see something and then next day they see all sorts of other ads that are the same thing. I was like,
oh, yes, exactly.
That's AI.
Exactly. Yeah. That's being personalized.
I'll tell you what, I remember back in 2007, 2008, when cloud was the big thing, right? And everybody's like, cloud. Like, okay, when was the first time you created, especially the older generations, right? When was the first time you created your email? Around 1996. Yeah, where did you create it? In your basement?
Even
no.
Maktub and
Maktub and Hotmail. I mean, my first email was Osama. I don't know how I lost it. It was Osama@hotmail.com. Can you imagine that? Like, I had that name. I lost it now. But that was created in 1996 or 1995. Did I create it in my mom's basement? No, it was on the cloud. Yes. So cloud, same thing with AI. AI has always been there. It's just it's different, kind of forms.
You said Hotmail.com was in cloud, which is true, but it wasn't cloud that actually is given to people. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
That's
so the software as a service, So
exactly. That's always what makes it different, right? When actually you kind of like,
the email as a service was given to me as a service.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, I'm talking about the cloud itself. I'm talking about you have kind of like the access to deploy your app in a cloud or something. That was not given at the time, which was coming later as a PaaS, platform as a service, and kind of like more infrastructure as a service and so on and so forth.
So AI is what I'm trying to say is AI is the same thing. And now the hype with AI is probably when someone says, "Oh, is my job is going to be replaced?"
Yeah.
That's probably is where the hype.
It's more your job going to change, and your job is going to need you to upskill as well. That's actually something I would say. Just it's from how you see it, right? Again, it's perspective, it's mindset, right? It's actually like, do you see that? Oh, there is a status quo. I need to preserve the status quo, otherwise it's not me. Then obviously, yes, you're gonna lose your job. Sorry,
carriages.
Exactly. I'm being very blunt in here. But if you are someone who kind of like, again, have the mindset of like, I'm going to work on myself. I'm always seeking to learn. I'm always seeking to what's next. Then you're just going to upskill and you're going to see how basically you change with the job change. That's kind of like, what's going to happen. What I'm trying to say is basically that AI is here to stay, and it's only going to get smarter. It's a revolution just like what we had basically with the internet revolution or the dot-com revolution or whatever it is, or the cloud revolution, right? So we really need to see how basically we're going to adapt to it, and how we're going to really kind of like also, I would say, attain this power.
The value, yeah.
Exactly, attain the value and really kind of like, make on top of it. Why for us, we're a venture studio for AI and energy? We could actually usually just say energy tech and that's it. No, but we play in the data layer. We play on the AI because we kind of like see a higher ROI for us as well.
That's smart.
Our margin is like, higher because of that. So we're niche. But that's what I'm trying to say. Everyone needs to see how basically to leverage. Again, it's all about leverage, right?
Yes.
I always say that. How to leverage that in whatever you're doing. And everyone now is going to become an AI company. Everyone, just like we said, everyone is going to be a tech company.
It's a tide.
Exactly. So just look into it, upskill. We definitely need you to upskill. And then look basically how to use it in terms of kind of like today and tomorrow.
Not just the ChatGPT bot. AI.
Absolutely. And here I'm talking again back to what's behind ChatGPT, right? The models, the LLMs, the fine tuning, the pre-training, are you really kind of like, able to look at the essence? I would
even go one step further and say, and I'm sure this is what you're saying as well, is that download the free models and train them yourself on your own. Since you're an entrepreneur, don't just connect on API. I know this is what you're saying.
Yeah. You got it.
Because there are many free LLMs.
So many LLMs, so many free data sets, so many even kind of like guides of how to use it, even if you're not basically an engineer. Yeah,
now, granted, you need to have a powerful sort of GPU or sort of, which is nothing, $16,000, you can get it and you can run your own kind of MVP on it.
Exactly. That's the thing. It just gives you a different perspective of what's possible.
Absolutely.
That's the thing.
And you're not held hostage.
There you go. Especially this.
Which will increase your valuation, by the way.
And then it increases your competence, which
increases your competence because you know something that everybody else don't know, traditionally speaking, outside of the API and SDK connections.
So this is very fundamental today for every entrepreneur. And I really, really want our entrepreneurs to kind of like, take this a bit seriously, because it's something that's going to change and is going to kind of like, really be one of the, what we were talking earlier about evaluations and stuff, is going to be one of the things that you are being evaluated.
I think it has to be. Yeah, it has to be. And when I work on any evaluations and someone mentions AI, I kind of scrutinize, but then scrutinize at a grounded operational level, whether it's at a development level, whether it's market kind of acquisition and customer acquisition level, or whether at product development and roadmap level. Yeah. Because you can't just slap AI and expect automatically. It's like, like in the West,
AI powered.
In the West you put halal and that's it. It's like halal water. The other day I saw halal water.
No
I'm
way.
like, what?
And then premium price.
And then premium price because it's halal, like organic, organic is like, exactly. No, you don't do that. But anyway, so this is changing. Obviously there's a wave, but the wave now is cooling down everything. So this is your advice. And I love how you kind of mesh the advice to entrepreneurs and AI together, which is very pragmatic and real, and they can do it today. What's your advice to VCs and investors, generally speaking?
To VCs and investors, I think, especially in the region, we're talking
right, and we're talking
like,
here, in the GCC, Middle East, sort of MENA.
Yes, absolutely. I think I have two types of advices. First is basically like, when you write the check, it's not just about the check, Make sure that actually you're really kind of like going through with the founder and you're adding value to the founder. I think this
after the check.
After the check, I'm not talking about before, because a lot of people actually like, you're there to kind of like just give the check, but then when it comes to the real value add, new customers, new partners, new kind of like, opening doors, basically, as we say, other investors to bring them into with you and so on. This is something very important. And I think a lot of founders really, really value. Some people are doing it the right way. Some others are not. Or not kind of like, saying, but I think this is something very, very important. And I think investors need to do more of it. That's basically, and this is again why I said the exited founders are actually kind of like, really needed, because they can invest themselves as angels.
Yes.
And they can really guide actually the founders.
They know what they're talking about. Exactly. They don't just have the cash.
Exactly.
They're not only financial people.
There you go. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So that's actually one thing. The second thing is basically as you're creating kind of like your funnel of who to talk to and so on and so forth, go to the undermined areas or undermine people or undermine sectors or undermine kind of like, do a little bit, challenge yourself, right? To get outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, to the only known or only popular.
Exactly. What we said earlier about the bias, right? The likability of the bias in the fintech, and you only talk to the people you know.
Be aware of that.
Exactly. Be aware of that. Because like you're also creating a bubble around yourself.
Yes.
And you don't want to miss on opportunities.
Because the opportunity loss is so high, the forgone opportunity.
Exactly. Because of that bubble. So you really need to a little bit kind of like, I would say, yes, it's difficult. It's not easy because it's so easy for us to kind of like get the text from people we know and that's it. But you need to do a little bit proactive in there and kind of like really looked into kind of like these places because as you mentioned, the opportunity cost is going to be really high.
Exactly.
Those opportunities.
ENTROGX.
Yes.
Where do you see it in 5 years?
Oh, we're going to take over the energy innovation space. The energy space or the energy sector, historically, when it comes to the digital transformation, was a bit kind of like late in the in adoption to it compared to the other sectors, right? But in the AI, it's not. In the AI adoption is actually taking it really faster.
Really?
Because I'll tell you two things. It's first because the AI needs energy. So the energy people, they're pushing it. So all the energy CEOs and energy executives now need to know what's this AI. They're asking us for
Why do you need
energy.
for all of this 100 megawatts and gigawatts?
What is this thing? And you think that you need energy for? That's one thing. And second thing also is because CIOs and CDOs, Chief Digital Information Officers and the Chief Information, they have recently seen the impact of digital transformation. Wow. So they are willing to actually kind of like double down on it.
Yes.
And see higher impact on the AI. They don't have the same kind of like, fear like others who actually are like, no. Because those people did the digital transformation like, ages ago. So maybe they're not even the same CIOs or the same CDOs who are kind of like, taking the wave of AI revolution in their corporates right now. But in energy, it's different. In energy, they are the same people who actually just like 5-10 years ago, mostly, like literally sometimes 5 years ago, they did complete new reshape of their corporate into digital.
Transitions into, let's say, cloud.
Exactly. There you go, which has really happened. So they see the impact, so they're willing to double down and advocate for the tech to kind of like,
which is important to have those sort of positive stakeholders. And because they are the ones who will enable it
they are
at the foundational level.
From internal champions, right? That's the thing. So those two elements are actually what accelerating the AI adoption and the AI kind of like, impact on energy. And we're doubling down on that. That's exactly what we're doing in ENTROGX.
We
want to kind of like,
leverage that. Leverage that
leverage that so that actually like, we basically take it to the next level. Take the energy industry to the next level.
Yeah, and you're exactly in the right time, at the right place, with the right caliber. And the right sort of capital. So like you have all the ingredients.
And this is again an open invitation as well for people to join this exciting journey, I would say.
Exactly. No, I'm very pleased to have this discussion with you, Chada. It's really a pleasure. And I would always root for you. And for ENTROGX and everything you're doing, because the energy you're bringing, the kind of the different thinking process that you're having, the kind of willingness to open up to these discussions, difficult discussions. And I can tell you this discussion was very deep and difficult. We had our agreements, we had our disagreements, but it was all based on similar purpose and goal, which is actually development and economic contribution to the region. And that's what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Osama, for what you're doing as well. Fantastic job that you're doing here. And please continue basically spreading this awareness. We really need more of this actually in the region again. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.